Gloves start popping.
Diving. He makes the catch.
And bats start cracking.
It is gone.
We bring you the voice of Bay Area baseball for the past 29 years.
As I always say, baseball reflects what life is all about.
This is Talkin' Baseball with Marty Laurie.
That's what we do. We talk ball.
On KNBR, the sports leader.
And good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talkin' Baseball on this Sunday morning of July the 21st of 2024. Glad to be with you as we get ready for Giants baseball against the Rockies at Coors Field. And boy, it has not gone the way the Giants thought it would go, the way everyone hoped it would go in the second half, or whatever we call the post-All-Star break season. The Giants have lost 2 straight to the Colorado Rockies. This is a team they're 11 games ahead of in the standings. And obviously, the Rockies have given them trouble here for the first 2 games. And part of it, the Giants' fault. As we've said before, the bullpen has been a problem. And last night, the bullpen was not a problem. But the hitting has been a problem. And it's been going on for a while now. And it really comes back to haunt you at a place like Coors Field where you can't get the runs that you need. And the Giants last night lose the game 4-3 to the Rockies. And the thing about last night, Kyle Freeland pitched a great game for the Rockies last night. And we said it on the pregame that he had 4 good ones in a row. And this was a good one for him. 6 innings for the lefty last night. He gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, 2 were earned. The Giants got a gift when Tovar made an error, and then they scored after that error on a double by Flores to close the gap to 4-3, and that was only in the 6th inning. And you thought, well, 6th inning, Giants can get a run here in the last 3 innings. But the difference in the game last night really was the Colorado bullpen. And this has been a bullpen that has been a work in progress for Buddy Black, and they've gotten whacked around pretty good all year long, where they're starting to settle in a little bit, and they got the Giants at the right time. Mears came in and gave them 2 perfect innings, and then Vodnik again came in, as he did on Friday night, and shut it down with a 1-2-3 ninth. And the Rockies walk away with a 4-3 win, and their bullpen 3 perfect innings with 5 strikeouts, and that really was the difference in the game for me. The Giants, you know the numbers in the 8th inning. They're one of the best teams in baseball, and they just couldn't get it going last night. Logan Webb on the hill, and he was wild. Boy, I'll tell you, I don't know what's going on with him. We know he had the bad game against Toronto. He didn't look good in the All-Star game. Maybe it was just the curse of Coors Field, which does it to a lot of great pitchers. But I thought it got in his head a little bit last night. I wasn't sure what to throw, throwing more of those straight 4-seam fastballs. Then he's got some change-ups, some sliders and sweepers and all that kind of stuff. But, boy, he was all over the place last night. This was not typical Logan Webb last night. And I'll attribute it more not being that tired, because he's a guy who can throw 200 innings, but the fact that it was Coors Field, and I think it got to him last night. He ended up walking 4 last night, striking out 4, and he was gone after 6 innings, 99 pitches in those 6 innings, and that was it for him last night. So not a terrible game for him, 8 hits, 4 runs, but those 4 walks had a lot of traffic last night and got in trouble early in that first inning. And it looked like he was going to get out of it with only 1 run. There's bases loaded, nobody out. And they got Diaz. They jammed him, and he got a double play ball to Estrada. And Fitzgerald, who had a good game last night. I like this kid. I like Fitzgerald. And he turned the double play, and a run scored with the bases loaded. And then the weirdness started, and Woe will be with us in a little while, the professor. And we've talked about this, a couple of times this season. It's the first baseman wandering off the bag and getting in the middle of a play that the second baseman really should handle. And look, Wilmer Flores is not a polished first baseman. We know it. Lamont Wade, not a polished first baseman, couldn't handle the Chapman throw on Friday night. We know that's going on, but these are fundamental mistakes that a major leaguer shouldn't make when a first baseman wanders that far off the bag, and Logan Webb didn't break to cover first. So even if Flores got the ball, I don't think Webb would have beaten Doyle to the bag. So what it meant was a second run in the first inning. And then the little kid, the shortstop, who's a heck of a player, hit a 2-run homer. And those are the 4 runs that Webb gave up, and that was it. And the Giants came back. Yastrzemski, guess who leads the National League in triples? And it's Mike Yastrzemski. He's got 6 now, and he leads the National League in triples. And he had a triple and then scored to make it 4-3. And basically, the Giants, as I look at my scorecard, once again 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. They're 2 for 13 in the series, but they get a run on the Fitzgerald home run in the 3rd. The kid has got power. They get a run in the 5th on the triple by Yastrzemski, and Fitzgerald got the double to knock him in with 1 out after Casale struck out. And then they got the gift in the 6th when Tovar made the error, and then Flores got the double to make it 4-3, and that was it. They couldn't score after that. So I'm glad that Fitzgerald is in there. I think he brings some dynamic play to the ball club. Estrada continues to struggle at second offensively. Last night he was 0 for 4. He's down in the 220s. I'd play Wisely at second. I'd play Fitzgerald at short. Matos, as I said, has been overwhelmed. I'd get Luciano up here and see what we can do with him to put him into this lineup and see if he can hit a little bit. Soler in the leadoff spot. I beat that horse to death yesterday. Not sure why he's still there. I don't know if he'll be in there today. Against the pitcher the Giants should have a good game against today, and that's Ryan Feltner. But Soler last night 0 for 4 for him with 2 strikeouts. He did hit 1 ball really hard to left field as a line drive to end the 5th inning with Fitzgerald on second base. He did get into that one, but I still think Soler's got to be put into the middle of the order, and he's got to be told, look, you got to develop here, and you've got to do some damage, and you've got to help out here. Ramos got the base hit last night. He has slowed down a little bit as they throw that high fastball to him. He's having trouble catching up to it. So last night, really, it was an offense. Again, they don't steal bases. They're 12th in the league in home runs, and they have some dead spots in the order. And they've got to get something going. What's up with Lamont Wade? This is one of the top players. He's come back from the injury, but boy, he has not done much damage here. And is he not playing enough? Is he hurt? Is there something up with him? He's choking up on the bat. Is he not looking for power? But boy, Lamont Wade has hurt them. So that's a problem for them as well. Chapman still continues to hit the ball hard. I like what Chapman is doing. Matos, as I said, looks like he's overwhelmed, although he did hit 1 ball hard last night. Other than that, he was handled pretty well. Casale didn't do much last night. And, of course, the kid at the end of the order, Fitzgerald, a homer and a double, and he had a good game last night. I'd like to see him play a lot more. Well, that's a story. The Giants now have lost 7 of 10, and I said so many times that this time of year teams disappear after the All-Star break. Look at the Reds. The Reds have lost 2 to the Nationals in this crazy jumbled wild card race in the National League, and the Giants have lost 2 to the Rockies here. Not good. You don't want to be doing this after the All-Star break. 4 coming up with the Dodgers, and then another 4 coming up with the Rockies next weekend with the doubleheader on Saturday. Hicks is not pitching today, which I'm very glad. We talked about that yesterday, that I thought he should be out of the rotation. He's not pitching today. I'm not sure why. I haven't seen any answers on that. If you've seen one, tweet it into me at Baseball Marty. But he may have to pitch in the rotation until Cobb comes back because they don't have any off days and they've got a doubleheader too. But I said yesterday I don't want it to be too late. I think this bullpen needs a jolt, and they need him in the bullpen. And if they've got to go to an opener instead of Hicks starting, I would do it. And I think they could get away with it. They've done it before. But looks like Snell Monday, Robbie Ray Wednesday. Everything okay with Webb probably on Thursday. and that's that Tuesday start. And if it's got to be a bullpen game, I would do it, and I'd put Hicks in that bullpen right now. I would do it because I think they need it. But it's Hayden Birdsong today, the right-hander, 22 years old. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to him in Coors Field. He's a breaking ball guy. Look, he's got the good fastball. That's four-seam, that 97, 98. Then he breaks off that breaking ball, and he freezes you, gets you off balance. But, boy, this is a place where breaking balls go to die. You've got to have that sinker. You've got to keep the ball down. And we'll see how Birdsong fares today against the Rockies. 19 innings for him, 17 hits. I think he's been terrific. Coors Field may be different, but out of Coors Field he's been terrific. 3 homers, 10 walks, 18 strikeouts, and the homers are all solo shots. Righties 250, they've got all the homers against them. First time through, 129. Second time, 367. That's the issue, that they kind of get a good look at him. And the third time is 200, where they get him out of there after that third time through. Ryan Feltner, on the other hand, for the Rockies, and if you're doing our contest today at Baseball Marty, guess the score of the game, win dinner for 2 at Original Joe's in North Beach, Westlake, or West Portal. Ryan Feltner's on the other side of this one. He's 1-9 with a 536 earned run average. The whip is 145. Giants have seen him once already this year. They got him out of there after 4 innings, 7 hits, 5 runs. I think Estrada took him deep, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Like Freeland, he's getting a little bit better. In July, 15 innings and 3 starts, only 12 hits, 5 runs, no homers, but 10 walks and 16 strikeouts. Lefties hit .306 with 8 of the 12 homers that he's given up this year against him. 102 innings, 115 hits, 33 walks, 91 strikeouts, so he can strike you out, and the Giants have trouble with that. But this is one that runners in scoring position, 324, 22 stolen bases, 5 caught stealing. I've said this a million times on these Sundays, that, boy, this one should be set up for the Giants. Well, this one may be an offensive game, I think. We'll see how Birdsong can do, but they may get him out of there early. The bullpen is well rested, at least in terms of not pitching every day. They did have the break. Friday they did pitch, and of course yesterday they didn't. They only needed Jelly and Miller. So for whatever that's worth, the crowd should be a little bit better today than they were, hopefully, on Friday. We'll see. Estrada 2 for 6 with a homer against them. Soler 4 for 10. Other than that, no one's really hit this guy too much in their career. Chapman 1 for 2. Flores, we won't see him today. 1 for 4. Ramos 0 for 1. Wade 1 for 5, and Yaz 1 for 8 there. So we'll see. Ryan Feltner, righty, 27, 1-9 against Hayden Birdsong. Giants try to avoid that sweep. The contest at Baseball Marty, and you can win dinner for 2 at Original Joe's. And plus, Raf, if you do enter the contest, comes up with a secret winner every week for dinner for 2 at Soto Mare. And Rich Azolino and Laura Azolino are the hosts, and it's fabulous, 552 Green Street in North Beach. So it's a lot of fun to do that. All right, we've got a good day today. The professor is next. We've got baseball. The Giants try to avoid the sweep. Got to hit the ball a little bit, and let's see what Birdsong can do today. But this is one that should be a very interesting game. Giants still very much in the mix, the thick of everything. This is game 100. Game 1, so we've seen 100 already. The Giants trying to get that elusive 48th win as they try to get it today against the Rockies. All right, the professor next, right here on the Sports Leader.
Talking baseball with Marty Lurie on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Experience the epitome of luxury and craftsmanship with Inicio Windows and Doors, another exciting product line from BMD Manufacturing. Inicio Windows and Doors sets the standard in ultra-premium European design. Wow. For the most demanding American building standards. Available both in steel and aluminum, they are meticulously engineered to elevate your living space to new heights of sophistication. Learn more about Inicio Windows and Doors today. Discover the perfect blend of European beauty and style with unwavering durability and strength. Visit InicioWindows.com. INICIO Windows.com. Inicio Windows and Doors, where European design meets American craftsmanship. It's been a pleasure working with Rick Robin this year. Rick Robin, R-O-B-B-E-N, NapaConstruction.com. Rick, the last time you were on with us, you told us about kitchen and bath remodeling, but there's a lot more going on up in your area.
Yes, there is. ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, which are known as the granny units. We can do your existing garage, attached garage, even building a new unit in the back. And so what we do is come out, bring our architect out there. Such a great thing. No sewer hookup fees, no water hookup fees. So that's what we do.
Rick, how does one start the process with you? How does one get in touch with you?
So you call Tammy, 707-332-7575, 7 days a week.
Rick Robin, ConstructionNapa.com. Rick, the thing I like about this, no problem for me. You come out with the plans, the permits, everything is in-house, no fees, and you get a new unit that you can rent out and get money back on your investment right away. I like it, Rick.
Thanks, Marty. Love talking to you.
Rick Robin, ConstructionNapa.com.
Time now to go to Sunday school with the professor.
Hey, Professor, take it easy, will you?
Giants coach Ron Wotus with Marty Laurie
Oh, I didn't know you wanted to get involved with the discussion, Mr. Helper.
on your home of Giants baseball.
Good answer. Like the way you think.
KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Brought to you by River Islands, one of the country's top-selling master plan communities just across the Altamont in Lathrop. Where else can you live on a lake next door to a park or walking distance to your kid's new school? With 10 new neighborhoods, River Islands is the one place you can't afford to miss.
All right, as we get ready for baseball today, we welcome in the Professor Ron Wotus. Well, how are you?
Good morning, Marty. I'm doing great. And I was just listening to your buddy Rick Robin on his commercial. My God, one-stop shop. I used him. He's fantastic. And just like you said on the commercial, he does a great job.
Yeah, good guy, too. And Tammy, I enjoy working with them. It's been fun. Boy, I was listening to Murph. He did one of the spots for River Islands and said that Lathrop is one of the largest growing, quickest growing cities in all of California. And River Islands is right in the middle of that. I didn't know that, and I thought that was a good sign.
Yeah, well, I can believe it. We've both been up there, and the amenities they have, the water by the river, and everything moves out a little bit further from the Bay Area. But now's the time to get in out there because everything pushes out. And I was just thinking, it's a little cooler here today. It's finally only 80 degrees at my house instead of 100, which is the heat's been unbelievable. Of course, they got the water out there, but it's got me thinking about the Del Oso farms that they have out there in the fall with the pumpkin launching and the corn mazes and all that stuff. That's a great time to go out there and visit them as well when you're going to see River Islands.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so glad that we could work with them. Very good. Well, the Giants, whoa, this is what I was afraid of. You come out of the break and you're flat and you lose a couple of games, and now how do you get them going here? The pitching, the this or that, it seems like the ship is leaking a little bit.
Well, you said it. You never know how you're going to come out of the break. Maybe fans might not understand this, but 4 days off in baseball is a long time. And, we always had workouts the day before. Now, I think they had a workout the day of the game, which, Bomel tried to get some guys, moving around and get some sort of work in before they play that first game. But it's not the same as having it the day before. And the reason they can't have it the day before is I believe that, MLB on off days, you can't have a mandatory workout in Major League Baseball anymore on off days. So, it does take the body a day or two to get back. You heard Javi Lopez on the broadcast talking about, the extended bullpens he would throw because that touch and feel, if you're not playing catch or moving around or doing anything, it's really odd how you're used to playing every day or being at the park every day, working out, stretching, throwing, hitting, the way the body feels. And, so you never know how they're going to come out of it. Now, you said it. So, the hitting in Colorado, Colorado's looked pretty good in this game. Of course, they always do when you lose and you're not scoring. The other team always looks good. But you said it. A fire has to be lit. It's up to the players in that clubhouse, for the leaders to get these guys riled up because, it's win time. You can't fall any further behind. And it's only going to get tougher if you do so. So they need to light a fire and realize, and they do. They know where they're at, but they just got to play better baseball.
I thought Fitzgerald gave him a real boost last night at short. You've been one of his big proponents all year long, and even the time he was at Sacramento. Kid's got power. He knocked one out last night, then he ripped one down the line. It was a big hit because it got the runner in after Casale had struck out. With a runner on third. Yastrzemski was on third. I thought Fitzgerald had a nice game last night.
Yeah, he did, and it was great to see because, he started with the club this year, and it didn't go so smooth for him, right? He seemed like he was snake bit. He had snake bit a little bit. He was playing outfield, infield. He had some errors. He did contribute, and his average is up there. I know he's got some swing and missing them, but you said it, he's got power. And I use always, breaking down players as a minor league manager, you look at the tools of the player. You didn't look at the performance necessarily so much in the minor leagues. You looked at his tools, and that's what, Major League scouts draft a lot. Now they look at, zone recognition and their performance a lot, but the tools play. And when you have speed, you have strength, you have power, you have the hands, you have the arm. Those are tools that, hopefully if you develop the way you should and get the right coaching, that you can become a very good major league player. When you're short on those tools, it's hard to compete at that level where the athletes are bigger and stronger and can throw harder than when you don't have those tools. So he definitely has those tools, and it's good to see.
It's interesting listening to Rob Manfred, the commissioner, over the break, and he does his press conference with the writers at the All-Star game, and he went on and on about young players. He wants to market young players. He wants young players who are savvy with social media and all that. And you look at the Giants really are not a young team. They're not a young team. They're not exactly what baseball wants. Maybe the Giants have to actually really think about going younger.
Well, it depends, if you're trying to win or you're trying to rebuild. And look, I think there's always they're always on good teams. I think there's always a good blend of young talent and veteran leadership and veteran players that have been there and done that. I think it's very difficult if you go all young, and a lot of teams do that today, right? They're out of it. They rebuild. They sell off all their players, and they don't necessarily keep any veteran leadership. Well, I believe in that. I think that takes a while for those teams to come back to be a playoff team when you get rid of all your veteran leadership and your proven players, unless you're just loaded with young talent. But the hard thing about that is, Marty, is you never know how good your own players are going to be. You may think and we've all scouted. We all believe in guys that manage in the minor leagues. I would think this guy's going to be good, and it's not an exact science. The level of competition. Sometimes you find out about players' makeup or their aptitude and retention. The higher they go, that they just can't get it done. Now, you shouldn't miss on your own players. You got to know your own players, like Felipe would always say, right? You may not know the guy in the other dugout. You might like him and look at that player and say, wow, he's a good player. But then you get him on your side and you find out his warts. So it's not an exact science. So if you have the players you believe in, one thing I believe in is if you really like your young player, you got to let them play. It's hard to break into the major leagues playing sparingly. And, some guys do it. Obviously, pitchers do it out of the pen, but some guys, if he's a real plus, everyday player, it's nice to see him get an opportunity to get those at-bats and get their feet on the ground.
Well, I think they're going to have to do it to some extent, and we'll see how they do it. And Farhan's got July 30th in his sights. Must be a little bit unsettling in a clubhouse, right? When you have July 30th, the trade deadline coming up, and there's rumors about doing this or that. How do you deal with that in a clubhouse?
Well, you put it aside. There's always distractions, but it is probably the biggest distractions you have as a ball club. And then for individual players, I mean, nobody wants to falter or fall all of it out of it at the trading deadline because we started this thing back in February, and everybody wants to finish the job. The wild card is so wide open. It's anybody's game, and I know it feels like doom and gloom right now, but with Robbie Ray and Snell, and these guys get on a roll, this team should be able to string off some wins and get to the top of that wild card. But it can be hard. Certain players, if they start reading their names in the paper about being traded, some guys can handle that distraction. Other guys, it just messes with them. So I think it's more of an individual thing. But I'll tell you where it's unsettling as well is for the front office right now, right? Because you got to make a decision. You got to make a decision on how you're going to go about this. But I know in the front office, you're always going to try to improve your club and do the best thing, for the team now and going forward. For the most part, it all depends what your record is and what your objectives are for that year. But you're always trying to improve the club.
Well, they're very much in it, as you said. This whole wild card thing. You have one good week, you win 6 out of 7. like the Pirates have done. The Pirates have won 5 in a row, and all of a sudden they're getting good pitching and they're getting real hitting. And all of a sudden the Pirates are a half a game out of the wild card. And it took 1 week to do that. So that's where we are in the season. So we'll see what they do. We've talked about this, as I mentioned in my open, the first baseman wandering off first base and getting in the middle of a defensive play that he sort of had no business getting in the middle of. We saw it yesterday with Flores, and I realized, he's doing his best out there. But, boy, the ground ball was to Estrada, and all of a sudden Flores got in the middle of it. Webb didn't break to the bag, and it cost the Giants a run, which eventually cost them the game.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. You want that first baseman taking that hole between first and second, playing way off of there, because when they're just standing near first base, there's not many balls hit over there by right-handers. So you want to do it, but I think there's a couple of things that have to happen, and we see this every year with a lot of clubs. Is the first baseman, second baseman really have to communicate well, and maybe they did, and he just reacted to the ball. But when you're that far off the line, you have to know how far to your right you can go, to make a play. You have to know the speed of the batter runner, because if you go way to the right and the pitcher can't cover, you're going to have a problem. But the most important thing is the first baseman. He has a big responsibility. You got to tell the pitcher, hey, you got to get over, because I'm way off the line. A ground ball to me, it's like the ground balls, with a lefty on the mound. You got to get over to take the throw. And the other thing he has to do is he has to know where the second baseman is. And I think that's as much the second baseman's responsibility as the first baseman's responsibility. And when that guy's way off the line, second baseman looks and say, hey, I'm right here. Or if the first baseman's playing pull on a lefty and the second baseman's way over, dead pull as well, you look at the first baseman, you say, hey, I'm way over here. So the first baseman knows how far to his right towards second base he can go. And he knows if it's hit hard, he's got to go. If it's hit slower, he knows the second baseman's going to be there. So communication, Marty, I think a lot of this stuff boils down to talking in the moment on the field and, checking your boxes with your fundamentals on the communication.
Yeah, great answer. Great answer. And I think that answered it really, because Estrada was in a position right behind Flores, and probably they had to do a little better level of communicating on that. I thought Webb got jinxed a little bit, or he got Coors fielded a little bit. I think it got in his head a little bit. It didn't look like the same pitcher, and I know he was trying to throw more four seam and didn't want to throw this or that because of Coors Field. I guess that happens with pitchers, but how did Bumgarner, Lincecum, Kane, how did these guys deal with Coors Field?
Well, I'd like to look back at their careers, because I bet they had their moments there as well. It really is an adjustment in that ballpark. And if you listen to Romo and Contos on the postgame last night, they hit it pretty good. Webby didn't look comfortable. He didn't have his command. No. I think the location of the pitches is tough, because one thing you don't want to do in that ballpark, you don't want to walk people. The more people you walk, then they, hit a home run, a Coors home run, and you're down by 2 or 3 instead of just being down by 1. So, I know it's not the same feel for pitchers there on the ball when you come in. I think it's easier when you're there all the time. It's easier to deal with it. The other thing is the mental side of it. I've seen a lot of pitchers over the years. You give up 3-4 in the first, and they think the game's over when it's not, because it's going to be 10-9. And mentally you got to stay with it, keep getting outs. Keep grinding. You can't say, oh shoot, we're going to lose this one. And of course that's not the case, because these games have been low-scoring games, but I have seen it affect pitchers in many ways. The other thing is the All-Star game. Webby didn't get any time off. I mean, when you go to that All-Star game, it's a lot going on. You know what I'm saying? You got the red carpet, you got the home run derby. Whether you're pitching in the game or not, it's just a lot. You have your family there, you're enjoying it. So, who knows if he was not feeling his best because of coming off the All-Star game.
Yeah, he didn't look comfortable last night, and you never see him walk 4, and the ball is all over the place. I'm glad that George and Sergio said that last night, and I watched a little bit of them after the game too. Hall of Fame Sunday. It's a big day up in Cooperstown today. Jim Leland is being inducted into the Hall of Fame, a manager. Didn't have tremendous success. Won a couple, the World Series, of course, with the Marlins, and he was a Pirates manager. What do you think of Jim Leland? Well, did you get to know him?
Yeah, I did. I was in in camp with the Pirates when he came over. Actually, he sent me out of Major League camp the one, year that I was there with him. I was, in the big leagues before with the Pirates, had my surgery, and then, Tanner is gone, Leland comes in. I absolutely love the guy. I think I followed his career ever since I met him in Pittsburgh because I just love the individual. I think he's, back at the time, he was the perfect manager. He was a blue-collar, no-nonsense, tell you like it is manager that was as competitive as anybody I've ever been around. If people want to learn about Jim Leland, go on the internet and read the stories, the way he grew up, a three-sport guy, blue-collar, working odd jobs, minor league manager, just grinding it out. I guess his dad was such a competitor that nothing was, good enough for his dad. Jim Leland would do all these great things in high school, and it was never good enough. So he's one of those guys. And another thing I liked about him was just not the competitiveness and no nonsense, is he could have fun with the guys. There's one story about they're doing the basketball pool, and he won the pool, and he had all the money, and he goes running out in the clubhouse in his jockstrap with money hanging off his jockstrap, saying, "Who won the pool? Who won the pool?" Guys are going, "This is our manager." They're going, but he could have fun. He could connect with a player, let his hair down. He knew it was like to play, but he demanded you to give your best effort, and he was there to help you give your best effort and make you a player. And if you didn't do that, he'd let you know. And love the guy. I think I'm so happy for him to be going in.
Great review. I remember him quite well when I first got into this. He was a manager. I'd go into his office. He'd be sitting there, in his skivvies and smoking a cigarette. But, boy, you could talk baseball with him. And, and I like, to talk situations and all that. He was terrific. He never made you feel like you didn't know what you were talking about, and he would answer you. And that's what I liked about him.
Yeah, look, he loves to talk the game. He's just a grinder. He came up in the minor leagues with La Russa. They used to go head-to-head all the time, cut his teeth in the minor leagues for years. And when he got to the big leagues, he never acted like he was better than anybody else. He remembered his roots, where he came from, and he would do his job to the best of his ability. And he didn't care who he was talking to, Hall of Famer or not. He was going to manage you the way he felt you needed to be managed.
Well, how about the incident with Bonds? It's
there you go.
Legend. He's screaming at Bonds, in the outfield, and he was not holding back. And that's the way Bonds had to be handled at that time. That manager manages men. But my question to you is, can you manage like that today? Could you get in a player's face today in the outfield and yell at him?
Well, if you have the respect, I think you can. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that lead up to you being able to do something like that. And hopefully, I'm not saying that you have to do those things, but the game was more of a man-to-man game back then. I think the money has changed a lot of the game and what the managers can do today. So it's a good question, but I think if you have a good rapport with the player and they have your respect, you can treat them like one of your own kids, and they'll respond if they know you're right? If they know you're right, they'll respond. But I think in today's game, you're always taking a chance. You don't know which way the player may respond to something like that. But I think it can be done in certain instances.
It's funny. As you're talking, I was thinking, can the manager flip the spread again? Can you come in and flip it and say, no one's eating, and that's enough of this? Can that happen? You ever see that happen? Did you ever do it?
Yeah, I done it a couple times in the minor leagues. That's the way the game was managed, and that's, the way I thought you had to do it. I know this, Marty. For me, there always becomes a breaking point. Can it be done? I mean, I managed in the minor leagues, and I could put up with a lot and all that. But if there was no effort and we were going through the motions, there's a point to some of these competitive people, and I was like this, that I couldn't watch it anymore. Go ahead and fire me. I needed to get my point across. I'm just not going to put up with this because it wasn't good enough. And I think that still exists with certain managers, but it's definitely not the way it was years ago because of the way the game and money and everything has changed.
Boy, it's a different game. It is. It's a different game. Gene Mauch, remember the spare ribs all over the clubhouse? And I always remember that. All right. I guess Todd Helton, he's in. We're at Coors Field today, and, of course, it's the Coors Field effect. They always talk about it. But what's your thought about Todd Helton, the Hall of Famer?
Well, he's another guy I love, just like Jim Leyland, because managing in the minor leagues, I managed against him in AAA, and loved the player. You could see he was a gamer. He played hard. He could flat out hit. He was impressive. And the one year in AAA, I think it was 96 or 97, Todd Helton, Todd Walker, and Jacob Cruz were the top three hitters in the PCL. And Jacob Cruz is our roving hitting instructor with the organization. And he had 366, Marty, 366 in the PCL. And I think Helton or Walker beat him for the batting title. But those three players had very, very well. Helton had the best career of the three, and 17 years with one team. And I don't liken him being into the Hall of Fame because of Coors Field. I think he would have been in any ballpark. Some of the same reasons I mentioned about Leyland, fierce competitor, gave his all, and a clutch player. He was a baseball player and one of my favorite players of all time, actually.
Yeah, University of Tennessee. And Peyton Manning was his buddy, and I think he played football at Tennessee for a short period of time.
Quarterback.
Right. Oh, Todd Helton was?
Yeah, I believe he was the quarterback, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I went to Florida in those days, and the Peyton Manning Florida games were great. As we always said, you couldn't spell citrus ball without UT, which was Tennessee. So that's where they ended up after Florida used to beat them. But that's another story.
Yeah, that's right.
That's another story. All right. Well, look, have a great day today. It's Coors Field. The dog days are coming. Not a lot of days off. The Giants have got to get something going, and they have to start doing it today. And they got a pitcher, Ryan Feltner, who's 1-9. You'd think they'd come out today and swing the bat.
Yeah, Marty, you've seen enough baseball. This thing can change on a dime. You just got to get on a roll, and good things that can happen. And we're fortunate that the league is the way it is, where it's wide open. It doesn't feel like it right now, but it really can, especially with a little help at the deadline. There's no telling, what can happen. So still a lot of games left. Doesn't feel good today, but let's get started moving in the right direction today.
All right. Great to talk to you. Have a good day. I'll talk to you next week, Will. Thank you.
All right, Marty. Great being with you.
Okay, that is the professor on Sunday morning. We learned a lot today, especially that defense by the first baseman. All right, more coming up. Glenn Kyper next, right here on the Sports Leader.
Talking baseball with Marty Lurie on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Vance Bridge Bank delivers their clients full relationship banking, including treasury management solutions and global market services. Bridge Bank offers financing solutions to businesses for their working capital, equipment, and real estate needs. This is very important in today's world. Fred Voss is the Senior Managing Director of Bridge Bank's commercial lending efforts in Northern California. He has commercial banking teams in San Jose with Jesse Garcia, San Francisco, Oakland, Cheadle, Cordova, and in Pleasanton. Bridge Bank, it's like banking at home. I can't say enough about it.
you for today's Orange and Black ball game, we now take you back to Talkin' Baseball with Marty Laurie on KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, glad to have you back with us here on this Sunday morning as we get ready for baseball. I hope you're watching on our stream as well. We bring in Glenn Kyper. Glenn, how are you this morning?
I'm fine, Marty. How are you?
Good. How was your trip?
It was good. Yeah, took the family back to Wisconsin, and we headed way up north in Wisconsin with a bunch of friends of mine from back home, and we floated on the water and jet skied and went tubing, and we did a whole bunch of stuff on a nice lake in Wisconsin. So it was a lot of fun. So,
come on, did you bring the Kringles back?
Oh yeah, we had a Kringle tour. How about that? It's a long story, but we got a tour of the Kringle factory. So yes, we brought some back as always, and we have plenty in storage in our freezers. So yeah, it's a Wisconsin thing, Marty. You know that.
I know. Dwayne does it all the time, and you guys always did that. So good. Glad to have you back. Did you get to see the All-Star game at all?
A little bit, yeah. Off and on. You hate to see, Webb get knocked around, which is always too bad. You can cheer for your guys a little bit, but I like watching it. It reminds me of being a kid, when you watched it as a kid, and it was such a big deal because you just didn't see these guys as much. Back in the 70s, they weren't on TV so much. But the only complaint I have about the All-Star game, Marty, and I think you feel the same way, is the uniforms. I want to see the teams in their regular uniforms just to check them out, and that was always a big deal as a kid too. Just seeing what the uniforms looked like, and I remember the A's would wear, their guys would wear different colors: green tops, yellow tops, white tops, which I always thought was kind of cool. So. That's the only part about the All-Star game that I kind of wish they would change.
Yeah, that was my favorite part for the introductions, when they would all be standing on the line in the different uniform or the team picture. That for me, I love the introduction. That was it.
Yep, I agree with you.
Yeah, well, that's the All-Star game. Webb didn't have a great game. Ramos ended up striking out. He tried to hit a home run. And then, of course, Miller for the A's, Miller versus Ohtani was one of those moments.
Well, and that kid is certainly fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see what the A's do here in the next couple of weeks, if they keep him or somebody would, you could probably get a huge haul for him. So that's a tough decision, for the A's, but he is fun to watch. And it at least gives the A's something positive to talk about. But, he's a must-see guy right now, so that's kind of fun.
Oh, look, the Giants have 2 games with the A's coming up, not this week, but next week at home. And, the A's score like 18, 19 runs a game and hitting home runs and all that. Giants are you cannot take them lightly. You're going to have to deal with them.
No, and they are playing better. They're still have a chance to lose 100 games, but they do hit the ball around the ballpark. That's definitely for sure. And I know if you think back of all the years the 2 teams have played, and as you said, the Giants and the A's will play next week, I believe. The Giants have always done well against them in San Francisco.
Right, that's right.
They have not played well against them in Oakland, so I think that'll be interesting to see as well. See what kind of crowds there are. But you're right, they have 4 games against them yet. And, the way things are going, Marty, here, Giants, I just don't think they can afford to slip up anymore. I think it's that time now. And you start looking at the numbers, Marty, and you start getting a little concerned, where they're at and how many games they have left. And you start doing some math, and you realize that it has to be go time right now for the Giants if they're going to try to sneak into this wild card thing.
Well, absolutely. This is game 100 today. And you and I have talked about this before. Where is this team at right now? What would you do? I talked a little bit about the pitching last night. I said Hicks should be in the bullpen today to help the bullpen out. Today I talked more about the offense and how it struggled. What do you do with this team?
Yeah, and you and I, we text back and forth some, and it has been a very hard team to figure out because you feel like they should be a little bit better than their record, but as we've heard many times, you are what your record says you are, right? And they're 5 games under 500, and they got teams in front of them, and I just did not see them losing the first 2 games of this series. It's just so important. You got to beat the teams you feel like you should beat. And, Marty, you start looking at where you think the numbers need to be for the Giants to get in. 85 wins? Does 85 wins get you into that third wild card spot? If you think that it does, Marty, well, that means the Giants in the final 63 games have to go 38-25. That's a .603 winning percentage. There's only 3 teams in baseball right now that are playing over 600 baseball. So that's how good they're going to have to be just to get to 85 wins, and we don't know if 85 is enough. So does 38-25 in the final 63 games, a .603 winning percentage, does that get you in? I don't know. But only the Phillies and the Yankees, or the Phillies, the Orioles, and the Guardians are the only 3 teams playing over 600 baseball. So they have their hands full here, and it needs to start, and it needs to start soon.
What do you do offensively? I've talked about Soler in that leadoff spot, and I've questioned it for weeks now. Not really doing the job. Can they get a leadoff hitter in there? Fitzgerald and Wisely. Lamont Wade has slowed down a lot. I don't know if he's hurt or what's happened with him. What do you do with this lineup?
Yeah, that's a tough. And the Soler thing is hard because obviously it didn't work in the middle of the lineup, which is disappointing. He has done the leadoff thing before, and I think Bob's just trying anything to get him going where he can help you. But you look, Marty. I mean, Soler has 1 home run in the last 22 games, and he's got 2 RBIs in the month of July.
Wow,
that's tough, right? So I think Bob's just saying, well, let's try him in this leadoff spot. He does take walks. And he had a really good month of June, but now he has not been great in July. So I don't know what you do with him, Marty. That's a tough call. Do you drop him down and hit him 6th or 7th? I don't know. And and the guy who's really struggling is Estrada, and it's too bad because he really had a good year last year. But Tyro, it's just a struggle. His on base percentage is down to .252 on the year. So that's a spot too where maybe you got to start playing Fitzgerald a little bit more in place of Tyro, which you hate to do because Tyro's a pretty good player, but he's just having a down year. And a down year, and now he's really struggling. He's 6 for his last 53. That's a 113 batting average. So, I'm sure Bob's trying to figure out what are we going to do here. But those are 2 spots that I think are they're becoming an issue. I think Soler, you're going to keep running out there because you just have to because you hope he gets hot. And Tyro, maybe Fitzgerald needs some more playing time there. That's what I think, anyways.
Yeah, no, you're right. I said today, bring Luciano up, put him at second base. He's starting to hit the. He's starting to hit the ball at Sacramento a little bit more, and that may be something that they can do. But you're right. Boy, you always give a good analysis of this. I appreciate your being on Sundays. You always come up with those good stats that really explain things. It is Hall of Fame Sunday in Cooperstown, and I'm glad to have you on to talk about a couple of them. One, we don't talk enough about Adrian Beltre. And, of course, with the home runs and the 3,000 hits. And, boy, I remember him when he came up with the Dodgers, and all of a sudden he went to the Mariners and just sort of exploded at that point. What about Adrian Beltre? Yeah. What do you remember about him?
Adrian Beltre, and I mean this wholeheartedly, Marty, one of my favorite players ever. And we saw him a lot, I was with the A's because, Seattle, and then, he had that year in Boston, but then, his final, 7-8 years were in Texas. So we saw him a bunch of times. He was just fun to watch. You could tell he was enjoying the game on top of just, really being a terrific player. But Once he got to Texas, Marty, his first year in Texas in 2011, I think that's when you really started to think, you know what, I think this guy's got a chance to be a Hall of Famer. He had some really monster years, with the Texas Rangers. But just a fun guy to watch because he was having a good time and he was playing. He played hard and he didn't miss a lot of games. He went out there. If you look at his career numbers, he didn't miss a lot of time. So well deserved, and seemed like a really good guy. Everybody raved about him just being a good guy, and then you start looking at the numbers, and it's a no-brainer to me. So good for him, and Helton was great. Joe Mauer, I like these guys that Helton and Mauer played their whole careers with the same team, which I think is pretty cool. You don't see that a lot anymore. And Jim Leland, one of the great guys, great characters, and great managers. So that's a pretty good group. And yeah, Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame is extra special. And congratulations to these guys.
Yeah, Beltre was a good glove too. A good glove at third.
Absolutely.
Remember
and
that.
you know what, Marty? Congratulations to Joe Castiglione as well.
I was just going to bring. Yeah. Talk about him a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, our family knew Joe when he was a young guy. He started out in Cleveland. I
didn't know that.
The Guardians back then, of course, they were the Indians, but he did TV, I believe, for them for a couple years. So he was doing it when my brother Dwayne was playing, and we got to know Joe a little bit. My brother Jeff worked for Joe for a little while in Cleveland, so that's where he really started as a young announcer. And then, he got the gig in Boston. He's been there forever. He really is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Just a class guy all around. Good announcer, very popular in Boston, which is not easy to do in Boston, right? I mean, it's a tough crowd there, but he's very popular. He called me numerous times last summer to see, how it was going, and so I'll always appreciate Joe for longevity, quality of work, and just being really one of the nicest people in our business. And he cared about other announcers. He checked in with you. So I was thrilled for him, and it's well deserved. He really is a good man.
Yep, I like him. He's a mentor to many people, a teacher as well. Good. I'm glad to hear that from you. Joe Castiglione goes in, of course, with the Ford Frick Award, and I hope next year we're talking about Mike and Dwayne. We'd love to see that.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think they both deserve it. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think it'll happen at some point. I hope so. I don't think those two guys worry about it a whole lot. They know how good they are, and they know how well respected they are. But from a family standpoint, absolutely. I hope I get to go there and watch Dwayne make a speech one day. That would be a good topper for what's been a great broadcasting career for him.
That would be great, and a Kringle party afterwards. All right, I love it.
Absolutely. You're invited, Marty.
All right. Be well, Glenn. Love to have you. I'm glad you're back, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.
All right. See you, Marty.
All right, be well. This is Glenn Kyper. Boy, what a pleasure. Every Sunday we get to do this. All right, Bruce Jenkins next, right here in the Sports Leader. Fans, it's great to have you back with us as we get ready for Giants baseball. We're joined by Grant Power, the president and CEO of Nations. Grant, a quick question for you. What do you like for breakfast when you go to Nations?
My choice, I go with the two-egger, and I either go super crispy bacon or I go wild salmon. I substitute that in. But I love both of those meat choices. I'm pretty much 50-50 on both of those. And then I go over medium on my eggs, and I ask for chopped onions on top of those. And then again, at 50-50, I go either French toast substitute or I go hash browns and toast. And if I go hash browns and toast, I almost always pick English muffin as my bread. Definitely do coffee, definitely do orange juice, and I'm always filled up. I usually don't need anything until a late lunch, and there are lots of wonderful breakfasts, but that's my top choice.
Well, I love it. All right, Grant, you're making me hungry. Thanks for being on. We'll talk to you again.
Always a privilege. You take care, Marty.
That's Grant Power, President, CEO of Nations.
Look through the window of the original Joe's on North Beach and you'll see two guys at the counter talking ball. Time for you to listen in to their conversation. Marty Laurie and the SF Chronicles' Bruce Jenkins are looking through the window of baseball. Sponsored by Original Joe's of North Beach and Westlake on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
All right, glad to have you back with us as you join us on our stream, and of course, talking to the world about baseball this morning. Bruce Jenkins joins us. Bruce, how are you today?
Good, Marty. Thanks.
Yeah, boy, break up the Rockies. Come on, what's going on here? The Giants cannot get a break in this series.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of a lot of games in the past when the Rockies just would dismantle them. You know, they don't remind you of Helton and Bichette and Larry Walker and those guys, but they're good. You know, they're names that you need to know, and Logan Webb found that out last night, and it's just tough. It's a tough way to come out of the break. You figure it's Colorado, you might have an edge, but they definitely don't.
Well, I'm watching Webb, and I said it with Woe this morning. Pitchers go into this Coors Field, and things happen to them. He didn't look right last night. It looked like he couldn't control he wasn't sure what he wanted to throw. They told him to do a slide step, and he wasn't thrilled about it, and he did it, and threw a slider with the slide step, and Tovar hit it 455 feet. He couldn't get a break.
Yeah, I mean, he walked the very first guy, and that's so uncharacteristic of him. He did leave a couple balls up. He kind of had to abandon the changeup. I think it seems like he just wasn't having any luck with that and kind of had to stop throwing it. So that's removed something from the hitter's mind there that he doesn't have to worry about. And, yeah, it's just tough. You know, he's such a great competitor. He's such a great guy, great pitcher, and he's such a mainstay. And, you know, you need guys like that to pitch great games, and he's in a little bit of a down slump right now. So we'll see how that works out. But is it Birdsong today?
Yes, Hayden Birdsong today. Hicks, I haven't seen anyone commenting yet on where Hicks is. Does he go Tuesday? Because I think Snell goes tomorrow against the Dodgers. Or is he in the bullpen? I'm not sure what they did with him. But it is Birdsong today against Ryan Feltner, who's been hit hard all year long. He's 1-9, and you'd think today should be a decent game for the Giants. But who knows what Birdsong will do in Colorado?
Yeah, you know, he's got the good demeanor, you know, and he's got the good stuff. His command isn't always there. And you make a little mistake there, and what might have been a fly ball somewhere else is going out of the yard, and you're down 3-0, and it just changes your whole mindset. It's just you're almost expecting, like you say, something just crazy up there. So I don't know. Then again, he might maybe after 6 innings he's got a 3-1 lead, and the Giants can pull one out because they really need it.
Yep, they do need it. Let's talk about a couple of things in baseball. One that I like is the Pittsburgh Pirates. And this O'Neill Cruz, you know, he is a superstar, and he's starting to do it, and Reynolds is doing it as well. They got a kid, Ortiz, who pitched yesterday, who's had 4 great starts for him. Bruce, Pittsburgh's only a half a game out of the wild card right now.
Yeah, they're having fun. The Phillies came in, and yesterday they had this great comeback win over the Phillies. The largest crowd they've had in 9 years. Cruz, like you said, 3 for 5, 3 RBIs. He hit a double at 120 miles an hour. You could barely see it before it hit the center field fence. And you know, they win it late on it, and whoever Nick Gonzalez is, he singles it in. And then yesterday they beat the Phillies again. Like you say, Luis Ortiz, he's had a bunch of good starts in a row. And if you put him in there with Skeens and Mitch Keller, and I like the lineup. I like McCutchen. Cruz is unbelievable. You know, Sawinski, Brian Hayes. They've got some hitters. Reynolds for sure. And they just have something a little bit going right now, which the Giants definitely don't have, and it's fun.
Yeah, and they have Joey Bart playing too.
Yeah,
and he's doing a lot of the catching, and they have a bullpen that seems to get the job done for him. And then Jared Jones will come back at some point. I think he's got the lat injury. So, yeah, that's a good story. But the other superstar is in Cincinnati, in this Ellie Dela Cruz. Bruce, I think I looked on our list today. He's got 47 stolen bases. And, again, the Reds run into Washington and lose a couple of games. But Dela Cruz is still the standout.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can't really stop that guy. It just doesn't take much. Just get him to first base somehow, and then he's on third. You know, we talked about that stolen base he had a few days ago where he wasn't running, but he was watching the catcher who had a habit of kind of just lobbing the ball back to the pitcher. And he goes, if he looks like he's going to do that, I'm going right now. And sure enough, he lobs the ball back to the pitcher, and he's standing on second. I mean, he's stolen home a couple times, and it's so funny. I mean, O'Neill Cruz and Ellie Dela Cruz, between them, they're really very similar. I mean, they both have amazing arms, amazing speed. They hit the ball as hard as anyone in the bigs, and they're just, you know, delightful to watch. And they're shortstops, which is so cool.
Yeah, I think it's a great part of 2024, the emergence of these two. They're here to stay, and they're really good. The Dodgers, you know, the drama. You know, they beat Boston again, but the way they did it to Kenley Jansen in the ninth inning. Come on. Again, I always say baseball can't script this stuff. And there it was yesterday. Kiki Hernandez.
Yeah, well, that was big because the bottom of the order is taking a lot of heat, and he's part of that. He had 2 huge hits in the game. And, you know, they came out of the break, and the press is all over them, and what are they going to do? It's panic mode time, and then they play. The Red Sox are really getting after it. They're a hard team to beat. and all of a sudden they get a good start from Gavin Stone, and then coming in here, they're going to get Glasnow on Wednesday and it's Kershaw on Thursday.
Yeah.
So they're kind of feeling like, they're in a position to kind of turn things back in their favor where they really are dominant. But, who knows? I mean, so many things have gone wrong for them. But, they're so much fun to watch. Betts will be back, and Ohtani, for heaven's sake, and Freeman. Will Smith, tremendous clutch player. And so they're just every day is a fascination with them.
They got some trouble in the bullpen with Phillips. Apparently he cannot. I heard this the other night. Lefties, their OPS against them are like 1,091, something like that. And now they got to use Hudson if they think a bunch of lefties are coming up.
Oh yeah, well the whole bullpen is just a complete crapshoot for them. Trinan came back and he's not the same guy that he was. Ramirez is a total disaster. Vesny, these are just guys. They're just guys. They're not Josh Hader, and that's a big thing that every team, like the Red Sox yesterday, they were never out of the game because you get into that bullpen and anything can happen.
Yeah, boy. So it leads me to Arizona. Zach Gallen, a good game for him yesterday. But the thing about Arizona that I made a note of, their pen yesterday, Gallen only went 5 innings against the Cubs. Their pen 4 innings, 1 hit. That's it. All zeros and 3 strikeouts. If you can do that with that kind of bullpen, and Suarez is starting to hit again, Marte is hitting, Walker's hitting, Carroll's hitting a little bit. The Dodgers have to look over their shoulder a little bit at Arizona right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, they've had so many injuries in the rotation, but eventually they think they're going to have, Kelly and Montgomery and Rodriguez in there with Gallen, and then Brandon Pfaadt pitched a really good game. I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, he goes today.
Seawald had a really bad stretch just before the All-Star game, but then he got it back, and he's closing games again. It's interesting. The kid, he's not really a kid, but Duran from Minnesota, the lights-out guy who threw 103 at Oracle.
Yep.
Arizona had him.
Really?
They signed him as a free agent out of the Dominican many years ago. They had him till 2018. They traded him to the Twins. But they're doing okay with Seawald. But if they still had this guy, because he's a different pitcher than he was way back then, he's completely lights out, and a big reason the Twins are a serious team. But yeah, I like Arizona. Carroll, he's hitting 213, but you see him hit that home run last night, and the way he runs the bases, you just figure, he could skyrocket at any time, and he's a big key to what they do.
Yeah, he's starting to thaw out just a little bit. You're starting to see a little bit more of Corbin Carroll. And the other one, and I was thinking of this today, the Giants invested a lot of money in Soler, and they didn't want Jock Peterson. But Jock Peterson, he does what he does. And, he's going to give you that at bat from the left side. And I know there are other issues with Peterson and the Giants, and maybe they'd seen enough of him. But, boy, that's the kind of at bat you'd like to see from Soler.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I don't know. I think Peterson's a better. I think he's a better pure hitter than Soler. Soler's got a great track record, but just looking at it right now, with Peterson, he played too much time in the outfield with the Giants because all of a sudden he's just not going to look good out there. Just period. He's never going to look good in the outfield. And Arizona, you just stick him in there, the DH against the right-hander, and he's really dangerous. He's a big part of what they're doing.
Yep, yeah, he is. And I think Arizona is the team to watch here to see what's going to happen with them. San Diego, Bruce, again, they win, they lose, they win, they lose. But Dylan Cease, it seems like every time he goes out there, it's 7 innings and 1 hit.
Yeah, Cease is he's their guy. I mean, they lost Darvish to he's having some personal issues of some kind, and Waldron had a rough start, but then they come back and Cease, and everything looks good. Like you say, they look really, really good today, and tomorrow it's like, well, I don't know about these guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is there's a lot of that going on in baseball right now, but I think they really need Tatis, and he's got a leg injury that's really bothering him, and it's like no return date and all that stuff, and I think if he were to come back and get in there with Machado and Cronenworth and all those guys, it's just a good lineup. But, they have their flaws, and I agree. I think Arizona looks a little bit more dangerous just right now.
Well, we'll see if the trade deadline is going to come up. A.J. Preller always does something. So, so get ready. Believe me, something will happen in San Diego. We'll see. But it is Hall of Fame Day, and boy, I thought back to when you and I started doing these shows together, which was probably about 25 years ago. We always did something on Hall of Fame Day. I don't know if you remember that, but it was something that we always did together. So let's talk a little bit about the inductees and your thoughts about Joe Mauer. Let's start with him.
Well, we talked a little bit about him yesterday in relation to Tony Oliva, but Joe Mauer was just the All-American kid. I mean, you talk about a three-sport athlete. He was like legendary in all three of them in basketball. Breaks in, he had a 365 batting average one year. He won Gold Gloves. He was a hometown guy. He just had that Hall of Fame look, like all the way through. Really, I mean, he looked like a cinch. And good for him. He's tremendous.
Yeah, Hall of Famer all the way. Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
all the way. And it helps Posey getting him in because he had that 6-year period was his best. And if that's good enough to get you in, then Posey could probably claim that as well. So that's good for him. What about Beltre?
Well, I was looking back. People forget he played for so long. That he broke in with the Dodgers and he spent 7 years with them. Wow. And the last year he had with the Dodgers, 2004, he hit 48 homers. He's second in the MVP. He hits 334, but he's a free agent. They don't sign him. He signs with Seattle. And the Dodgers went 8 years before they even came close to replacing him at third base. I mean, it's Casey Blake and Blake DeWitt and Wilson Betterman. I mean, on and on. They went 8 years after losing Beltre before they got that position together. I mean, and they realized time after time how valuable he really was. And, I mean, this guy he hit 300 when he was 37 with 32 homers for Texas. And, Gold Gloves and he's another guy who had that look about him. Even as he finished really strong with Texas, and his Hall of Fame case only got stronger as he just kept producing for them. So, great day for him. And the guy played 21 years. Good grief!
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he played that long with the Dodgers. Yeah, I remember the 48 homers that he hit. He just broke through. And that was a great glove, as I was saying to Glenn Kyper. Great glove. Beltre, great glove.
Yes.
Todd Helton. It took him a little while to get in, and the Coors Field effect, I think, held him back. But talking to Woe about Todd Helton and a little bit to you and Glenn, Todd Helton and Thomas Harding was on yesterday. Helton is very, very well-deserved to be a Hall of Famer.
Well, you look at the numbers and you forget about Colorado, and you see – he had 372 one year. He had 336, 358, 347. He was still hitting 325 when he was 35 years old, and 316 lifetime, 2,500 hits. And that's just you can't hold that back when it comes to the Hall of Fame. I think people, myself included, sort of agonized about him because with Mattingly and Keith Hernandez not getting in. Those guys are superior players to Todd Helton as much as I like Helton. Those guys are godlike for me at first base, and they never did get in. And, I think Helton, the whole first base thing may have held him back a little bit, but he is in, and, another amazing player. In Colorado, you're not going to get many shots at the postseason. He only had 3 seasons when they got in, and he didn't really do anything. So you couldn't remember him from the playoffs, which I think is something you can think about with Keith Hernandez. Just for or a guy like Will Clark who's not in. You remember the playoffs like mad, but all things considered, these are 3 guys who should be in, and good for them.
Boy, good analysis of Helton. I think the Coors Field effect held him back quite a bit. And I know listening to Mad Dog on Sirius, he always talked about Helton, his road numbers. He said, "Wow, when you look at his road numbers, he doesn't deserve to be in." And I know how he went off on that.
It was pretty radical. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he went off on that. Well, we got Mauer, Beltre, and Helton, and how about the manager? Woe did a great job of talking about Jim Leyland today. I got to see him in the clubhouse and talk to him in his office when I first started. I loved it. The guy would just sit there with a cigarette and just talk baseball with you. There was no holding back.
Yeah. I remember when the A's played Detroit in the playoffs, 2006, somewhere in there. After the series ended, the Tigers had won, had beaten the A's, and the next morning I went to breakfast somewhere near the team hotel. It seemed like a nice, lively place, and there's a big table and it's a bunch of fans, and Leyland's right in the middle of it. He's sitting there with a bunch of people he probably didn't even know, just chatting away. He's the most decent guy ever. And I remember him, from the Pirates when he managed them. I got to hang around him a little bit, and you'd go in there and I never minded cigarette smoking. It was a good thing if you're around him. It's good. You're gonna get that, especially back then. But a real good manager. He was a guy who stood up to Barry Bonds, and very few people have ever done that.
Yep.
Players, executives, managers, anybody. And I think Bonds appreciated that in him. But tremendous Hall of Famer. Then he wins the whole thing in Florida. I mean, oh my goodness, he's really a great career.
Yeah, and didn't he go to Colorado? And he said, after 1 week, I've seen enough of Colorado. Remember, it was
he wasn't a Rocky Mountains kind of guy, I don't think.
No, it was the old Eddie Sawyer quote. Eddie Sawyer was the manager of the Phillies in 1960. And after 1 week, he said, you know something? I'm 49 years old. I'd like to live to be 50. I quit. And that was it.
Yeah.
Leyland had that moment, I think, in Colorado. Great story today, and you'll appreciate this. I know you know it. But today's July 21st, and today is the day that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. And the Alvin Dark story with Gaylord Perry.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Dark.
That's unbelievable.
I'll let you tell it. Go ahead.
Well, I think I think you'll have it better. I think you'll have the details better than I will.
All right.
Remember that there'll be a man on the moon before Gaylord Perry
exactly
hits a homer. There's a man on the moon. Like 20 minutes later, Gaylord homered.
Exactly right. He was such a bad hitter. They watched him in the batting cage, and Alvin Dark says he'll never hit a home run. The man will walk on the moon first. Neil Armstrong walks on the moon, and later that night, Perry hits a home run. I just tell you,
grief. Yeah,
what
that
can I
is
say?
So good. One of the greats. One of the great stories.
I love it. I love it. Where were you when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon? Do you remember?
I was in Hawaii. My dad was doing an album with Don Ho in Hawaii, and my buddy Jack and I went over there to get some waves and just experience Hawaii in the late '60s, and we were watching in a hotel room. And maybe not the greatest setting, because you just don't really want to be inside for any reason in Hawaii. But that day you made an exception.
I'll say it again. The column you wrote yesterday on Tahiti and the surfing and the Olympics, I'm afraid to go near the ocean now.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's a scary place, Marty.
Really, it was really good. It really was a good article, and now I'm interested in watching surfing during the Olympics. It really was very good, very good. Storylines. ESPN did a nice thing with this week, and I picked out a couple just to ask you about it. The biggest storylines of the year and how they may end up. And the first one they say is the American League MVP, which is a good one. You got Judge, Gunnar Henderson, and Bobby Witt Jr. MVP. Who's going to get it?
Yeah, you guys asked me last week about that, and I went straight to Judge. But I don't know. The more I think about it, watching Gunnar Henderson, he's in a pennant race against the Yankees. They've got a lead. This guy is just an unbelievable player. He comes up big so many times when they need it. Great fielder. He's got a lot of panache, homering, batting average, everything, and so he's going to be right there. Now, if Judge hits 60 homers and the Yanks win, and it's all the drama that would go with that, of course he'd be a good candidate. And Judge is he's not going to catch Stephen Kwan, but he's having kind of a Triple Crown like year. And then none of this even mentions Bobby Witt, who's just a monstrous player. And I think that Kansas City kind of needs to hang in there and not disappear from the mainstream for him to get the votes. But it's not like he's a big mystery. I mean, people really know about him. I think they're bad. They're only 6 behind Cleveland right now, so they're definitely in striking distance. But he's a son of a ball player. Always has hung around the game, and those guys, Bonds and Ken Griffey, on and on. There's something about them, they're so comfortable in that setting, and that's just a tremendous race right there, Marty.
Yeah, Witt has he leads the major league in hits with 131.
Wow.
And our guy Arise is second with 125.
Mm-hmm.
Then Altuve 120, Ohtani 119, and Duran, who I wanted to mention, is at 117. Duran Bruce leads the American League in doubles and triples. How about that?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that guy is really coming on, and it's just in time for the Red Sox. But he does it all. He's got speed, extra base power, home run power, good defensive player, and he's one of those guys that with the Red Sox you don't really who is that again, and all of a sudden the name locks in and you remember him for the stretch drive. But yeah. he's leading the way there. He's something.
Yep, and he run. I mean, the guy is fast.
Yeah,
I remember he gave the Giants trouble when the Giants played the Red Sox here in San Francisco. I remember that's when I first realized who he was. Guess who's leading the National League in triples? Mike Yastrzemski with 6.
Is that right? Wow.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, yep. he's come on lately at a good time for him. There was a lot of exasperation over him, but there should have been. He was hitting 220 or whatever, but he's coming on, and any time you lead the league in triples, that's just a very cool stat. And he could do it. He runs good. He's a gap hitter, but he's got to keep hitting. There's some holes in his swing, and you never know if he might take a little bit of a dip. But they're really going to need him because the team is. They're just not hitting. I mean, Marty, last night, they had a game going. All of a sudden, 7, 8, 9 innings. The last 9 guys just get mowed down. Nothing. No base runners.
Nothing.
You can't have that.
Nothing. No, Mears came in and just they couldn't touch him.
Yeah.
And Vodnik, whoever he is, Vodnik is okay.
Yeah.
They actually
credit to those guys for sure. Yeah.
One historical note today, and it goes back to July 21st. Of course, we talked about it. Clay Kirby, 8 no-hit innings for the Padres. They're losing 1-0. Preston Gomez, who does this often, takes him out with a no-hitter because he's losing 1-0. They pinch hit for him. Nothing happens. No-hitter gone in the 9th, and they lose 3-0. But boy, he was mercilessly criticized for taking the guy out. Today, you're out. You go 8 perfect, and they'll take you out.
Yeah, you're like, what's Kirby doing out there in the 7th?
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, in those days, though, first of all, the Padres were absolutely terrible. They were especially bad, going nowhere. So, but Preston Gomez, all he could think about was, we've got to win this game. We're down 1-0. It's late. And he had a pinch hitter, Cito Gaston, who didn't start that night, who was the best hitter on the team, the best all-around hitter they had. So I mean, you kind of can get it, but it was so unusual in those days. I mean, the complete game was the thing. That's a year. Fergie Jenkins and Gibson and Gaylord, they all had more than 20 complete games, for heaven's sake. Frank Rieberger and Rich Robertson were pitching complete games for the Giants. And Kirby himself had 6 complete games. So, and the combined no-hitter at that time, there had only been 2 combined no-hitters in the history of the game. And when it came to pulling a pitcher with a no-hitter after 7, that had only happened 2 times. It was just, that guy's going to finish the game. Forget everything else. He's got a no-hitter going, and he's going to finish the game, which I love that whole attitude. Now you probably never see a no-hitter if the guy struck out everybody. He's got 18 Ks, but he's throwing 102 pitches to get him out of there.
Well, and the other thing about the Padres, they weren't going anywhere. They were going to lose 100 games.
They were just terrible.
Awful. And you figure, all right, let the kid try to get it done. But that was baseball back in 1970. Not that long ago, but that's the way the game was played.
Yeah.
All right.
And you know what? They almost had a no-hitter. The Padres weren't a very old franchise that year. Turned out 50 years later, they finally got their first no-hitter from Joe Musgrove.
I love it. That's baseball, as we like to say. All right. Hey, good to talk to you. Enjoy the day, and we'll talk next Sunday. Thanks.
Okay,
Saturday.
sounds good, Marty. Thanks.
All right. Bye, Bruce. All right, that is Bruce Jenkins. All right, got an interesting author coming up next, Eric Vickery. And I picked this out today because he wrote about the St. Louis Cardinals of 1982, the running Redbirds, because they had an identity. And we talk about team identities. He really captured the identity of the 82 Cardinals. So we'll hear from Eric Vickery next, right here in the Sports Leader.
Talking baseball with Marty Lurie on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Vance Gene Pagano checked in from the Tides up in Bodega Bay, and he said that while it's been hot inland, we know that, temperatures have been quite comfortable out on the coast, ranging from the mid-60s into the low 70s. At the Tides restaurant, patrons have a wide variety of choices, ranging from delicious seafood salads and pastas to the ever-popular fried calamari and grilled fish. If you're planning a trip to the beach, the Tides Fish Market offers a great selection of food and beverage items, perfect for picnicking, while across the hall, just go into the gift shop. They have whatever apparel you need, from swimsuits to beach towels, anything you might need for that excursion. And if you're looking to stay for a day or two just across the Highway 1, the Inn at the Tides with its large, comfortable rooms, all with a view of the bay, is waiting for you. So if you're looking to get away and escape the heat, you need to look no further than the Tides Wharf and then the Inn at the Tides in scenic Bodega Bay. Everyone likes a party, but everyone loves a party at Original Joe's. With 3 private dining rooms, it's the perfect spot to hold your next big event. From christenings to corporate gatherings, we'll make your next party San Francisco special. Original Joe's, see you at the counter.
Orange and Black family, the godfather of Giants baseball now continues. This is Talkin' Baseball with Marty Laurie on KNBR, the sports leader.
Fans, it's great to have you back with us as we get ready for Giants baseball. A pleasure to bring in Eric Vickery, Vickrey. He's written a book called The Runnin' Redbirds, the world champion 1982 St. Louis Cardinals. It's really a good book and a good historical look at what the Cardinals were like in 1982 and whether we'll ever get back to that kind of baseball again. It's put out by McFarland, and of course we support our local bookstore up in Montclair, the Book Tree. I'm sure David can get it up there. But let me tell you, Eric Vickery, he's contributed to numerous publications through the Society for American Baseball Research. We love it, SABR. And he lives in Washington State. Eric, a pleasure to have you on the show today. How are you?
I'm great, Marty. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. You know, as I said in the open, you know, the running Redbirds, the Cardinals that were tailored to that, you know, the fast turf in St. Louis and all the speedsters at the top of the lineup and didn't hit many home runs at all and end up winning a World Series, which we're going to get to. But why was this of interest to you? How did you come about this book?
Well, I grew up near St. Louis in the 1980s and kind of fell in love with baseball watching the mid to late 80s Cardinals teams, guys like Vince Coleman, Ozzie Smith, Willie McGee, and Tom Hurd. Those are some of my favorite players growing up. I went to my first game in 1986, so I was a little too young to remember the 82 World Series. So a few years ago, I was looking for a project and decided to kind of really dig into the 1982 season. Of course, that was the Cardinals' only championship of the decade, despite them having multiple successful teams, and thought it would be fun just to go back and really dig into that season and kind of relive that bygone style of baseball that we don't see today.
Well, it starts with really Whitey Herzog, the White Rat, as they used to call him, the manager of the Cardinals. I guess when you do a story about that dynasty, and it really was a dynasty of St. Louis baseball, and I will point out, which I didn't realize, as I've said, this is the first time the Cardinals get in the playoffs since 1968. And that series against the Tigers back then, and of course the World Championship in '67 against the Red Sox is that first World Championship since then, and also the first National League East title. And so I guess it all starts with Whitey Herzog, right, the manager?
That's exactly right. Yeah, the Cardinals had some pretty good teams in the 70s, but, yeah, couldn't get over the hump and never won a division title despite having guys like Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, still in the primes of their careers, Ted Simmons, Gary Templeton, guys like that coming on later in the decade. But, yeah, they hired Whitey Herzog in 1980, and he really put his footprint on the team. He was initially named manager and then was given the dual reins of not only field manager but also general manager. So he had the authority to kind of remake the team according to his vision. And his vision was to build a team for the ballpark. Busch Stadium was a pretty enormous field. It's 414 feet to center and 383 to the power alley. So, and they also played on AstroTurf. So he recognized that a team built on speed would likely have more success in a ballpark like that, and he sort of reimagined and rebuilt the team to fit that.
Well, there was a huge trade. Let's say Keith Hernandez is there. They signed the great Joaquin Andujar at the end of '81. But there's a huge trade that brings the Wizard, Ozzie Smith, to the Cardinals, and I remember it well, for Gary Templeton, and that to me was the turning point for the Cardinals.
Exactly, yeah. I think that really put them over the top. They had a pretty good team in '81 too as well. In the winter of 1980, Whitey had pretty much traded away about a third of his 40-man roster in a series of moves that landed guys like Bruce Sutter and and a few other players from the Brewers and Padres. But yeah, it was really the acquisition of Ozzie Smith prior to the '82 season that kind of put them over the top, and I think really propelled them to the division title.
Let's talk about the nature of the book, so fans get an idea of how you put it together. Is it a chronology of the season? How would you describe how you put the book together?
Sure. Well, what I realized as I started writing the book was that you really can't tell the story of the '82 season without really digging into the rebuild, which, like I said, started kind of in the winter of 1980. So the book kind of starts with that, with Whitey's hiring in 1980 when the team was really in the doldrums. They were in last place when he was hired. He took the reins, and they immediately started playing better under his leadership. So, yeah, it kind of goes chronologically from there. And then interspersed within the book are sort of mini biographies of the players. I'm always interested in telling the players' stories and kind of digging into their lives and kind of how they ended up on the Cardinals at that point in their career. So you'll learn a lot about the players as well as that season.
Well, as I say, they ran. Didn't hit a lot of home runs. You talk about Tommy Herr at the top of the lineup, Ozzie Smith, people like that, and of course Keith Hernandez, a great fielder. But Willie McGee, my God, it was a team that was just so different than any other teams, and they really stood out. Did you get that feeling?
Absolutely, yeah. They stole 200 bases, which led the league, while only hitting 67 home runs, which is almost hard to fathom these days. Their leading power hitter was George Hendrick, who hit 19 home runs, and they only had one other player in double figures, which was Darrell Porter with 12. But, yeah, speed was the name of the game, especially as far as their offense and defense was concerned. The other acquisition that kind of maybe was overshadowed by Ozzie's arrival was the acquisition of Lonnie Smith as part of a three-way trade with Philadelphia and Cleveland. Lonnie Smith led off for most of the year, and he really set the tone starting on opening day. He was hit by a pitch by Nolan Ryan, immediately stole second base, and that was kind of they were off and running from that point. But, yeah, Lonnie Smith still led the team with 68 steals. And as you mentioned, guys like Ozzie, Willie McGee, David Green, Tom Herr, just ran laps around the rest of the league that year.
Well, it's funny when you think about the top of that lineup and how good they were, and Whitey Herzog orchestrating this particular team. But you have to have pitching. And look, we learned it with the Giants over the years. Didn't hit a lot of home runs in their 10, 12, 14 years, but had great pitching. Mm-hmm. The Cardinals did have great pitching, and Bruce Sutter was the guy in the bullpen. But what about the pitching? Because you can have all the offense you want. If you don't have the pitching, you're not going to win.
That's very true, and I think that's something that maybe is overshadowed by the Cardinals' immense speed that year is how good their pitching was. And you mentioned Bruce Sutter. He was probably the most, looking back, the most notable name on that staff, and somebody that Whitey Herzog made a point of acquiring when he got the Cardinals job. He had lost a few ALCS series when he was managing the Royals, and kind of really made getting a elite closer his priority. So they had Sutter at the back end of the bullpen, but a pretty good starting rotation. You mentioned Joaquin Andujar. He was kind of emerged as the ace that year. Prior to that point in his career, he'd been sort of had kind of a roller coaster career, mostly with the Astros, but really kind of came into his own that season. They had Bob Forsch, a veteran, kind of a crafty righty, kind of a control pitcher, and a couple of rookies who emerged, John Stuper and Dave LaPointe. So those guys really kind of set the tone and were a big part of the Cardinals' success that year.
Boy, it's funny. Eric Vickery is with us. Running Redbirds. Well, as we talk, it all comes back to me here. The world champion 1982 St. Louis Cardinals. It's a good book. It's a lot of fun to relive that season. Boy, you mentioned Dave LaPointe, David Green. they eventually became Giants for Jack Clark, and we all remember that. So as you said those names, that trade came flowing back to me. Of course, we got Juan Uribe, the player to be named later, which he was Juan Gonzalez at that time. So I remember that, if I'm not mistaken, or Jose Uribe. Yeah, I forget which Uribe it was, but that was part of it. But they had some notable games with the Giants. I remember some of those Cardinal-Giant games. They were tough games in '82.
They sure did, and that's back when the Cardinals and Giants played each other 4 times a year. Now it's just a single home and road series. But back then, they played each other 4 series a year, and they really had a chance to impact one another's division title. A couple of series stand out to me from that season. One is late May. The Cardinals were really struggling with injuries. They had their top 2 catchers, Darryl Porter and Gene Tennis, had gone on the disabled list. Tom Herr and George Hendrick were both out with pulled muscles, and so the Cardinals limped into Candlestick in late May, really with a chance to lose their footing on the division following a 12-game winning streak in April. But they had some guys who really stepped up. That was Willie McGee's second start of his career. He had a huge series. Guys like Mike Ramsey, Tito Landrum, Glenn Brummer came up from the minors, and those guys helped sweep the Giants in late May and kind of got the Cardinals through a tough stretch of injuries. And then, of course, in August of that year, another big series between the Cardinals and Giants occurred at Busch Stadium. First game of the series, the Cardinals blew a 7-0 lead, which they had in the 7th inning. The Giants came back and won that game. That was probably the Cardinals' most disappointing loss of the year. The following night, the Cardinals were up 6-0 and almost blew another lead, but hung on to win 7-6. And, of course, Cardinals fans, probably the most memorable game of that year was on August 22nd of that year against the Giants, in which Glenn Brummer stole home to win a game. One of the more memorable games in Cardinals franchise history, to be honest.
Well, to be honest, he shouldn't have stolen home. It was strike 3 to the batter, and Frank Robinson went crazy and came out, and the umpire didn't call the pitch, and Glenn Brummer stole home. With 2 out, 2 strikes, he stole home, but the pitch was a strike, and the game should have been over at that point. So I remember it well. See, it's coming back to me with this book as well. What about the World Series with the Brewers? It wasn't no cakewalk for the Cardinals at all.
Absolutely not. Yeah, the Brewers were an absolute juggernaut of an offense. They had, I mentioned Darryl Porter led the Cardinals with 19 home runs. The Brewers had 6 players who hit 19 or more, including 3 players, Cecil Cooper, Ben Ogilvy, and Gorman Thomas, who hit more than 30. They had 4 guys with more than 100 RBIs and 3 guys, Yount, Molitor, and Cecil Cooper with more than 200 hits. And even their 9th place hitter, Jim Gantner, hit over 290. So top to bottom, they were an absolute juggernaut and led the American League in runs scored. So the Cardinals really had their at a test of wills to get through that series, but somehow they managed to pull it off.
All right, that is Eric Vickery, and glad to have him on, and glad to have him on today because it's identity, and he talks about the identity of this ball club, and Whitey Herzog made the club fit the ballpark, and he got a team of speed, and they won. They won the World Series, and I think about the Giants and their ballpark and the kind of team you want to see there, pitching and defense, but you want to have speed in the Giants ballpark, and I think that's something for Farhan to, as a goal, is to get more speed on this team. They're last in the National League in stolen bases, and you need speed, and that's why I like Fitzgerald and Wisely being in there now to help out. But I thought learning about the Cardinals and how they did it, they really did do it, and they became an excellent team on a team that was tailored to the ballpark in St. Louis. So Eric Vickery, nice job. As I say, up at the Book Tree in Montclair, David can get it for you. All right. We've got more coming up. Kerry is in the wings here. We got him coming up. And, by the way, Jordan Hicks is going to pitch Tuesday. And thank you. Someone tweeted that into me. Bob Melvin said that yesterday at the conclusion of his show. So Jordan Hicks is not available in the bullpen. I think he should be. But look, let's see what happens today. I think the Giant bullpen will be part of the game today. But at some point, Hicks has got to be the right-hander in that bullpen. So, boy, a lot of baseball on this Sunday. A lot of baseball. I've enjoyed it with Woe and with Glenn Kyper and Bruce and, of course, Eric Vickery. We'll take a break. We'll come back with a little bit more, and we'll do that right after this.
Talking baseball with Marty Lurie on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Fans, I'd love to talk about Georgie Brothers Furniture. They've been in the Bay Area for over 90 years. They have that 50,000 square foot showroom. It's got over 150 wonderful carpets, window coverings, and all sorts of furniture manufacturers. Well, the big news is stressless chairs. They make high-quality, comfortable furniture, sectional sofas, love seats, single reclining chairs, as well as the famous stressless chair, which I have, in my home. Now, there's a great sale going on. It goes on till August 5th, and it's called On the Spot Summer Savings. This is very exciting. You can receive an instant rebate for $100 for every $1,000 spent. So the 10% savings is really one of the best of the summer. Stressless furniture, I'm telling you, you have to try it. It's very, very healthy, very good for you. Check out Georgie Brothers Furniture. It's in South San Francisco, but look at them online. Georgie Brothers, GIORGIBROS.com. That's GIORGIBROS.com. Remember, tell them that Marty sent you. Experience the epitome of luxury and craftsmanship with Inicio Windows and Doors, another exciting product line from BMD Manufacturing. Inicio Windows and Doors sets the standard in ultra-premium European design. Wow. For the most demanding American building standards. Available both in steel and aluminum, they are meticulously engineered to elevate your living space to new heights of sophistication. Learn more about Inicio Windows and Doors today. Discover the perfect blend of European beauty and style with unwavering durability and strength. Visit InicioWindows.com. INICIO Windows.com. Inicio Windows and Doors, where European design meets American craftsmanship.
Giants fans, there's no better way to set the game day table than talking baseball with Marty Laurie. Marty keeps rolling on KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, great to have you back with us as we get ready for baseball today. Well, there's too many of these things lately. The passing of major league scouts and players and things like that. And there was one this week that got me. Jerry Walker. Jerry Walker was a pitcher for the Orioles in the late 50s. He also saved Early Wynn's 300th win. Believe it or not, when Early Wynn won his 300th, that was his last major league win, Jerry Walker got the save. He went on to be a general manager, a scout, an assistant to a general manager with the Tigers, with the Cardinals, with Cincinnati. Just a wonderful, wonderful man, and he was on my show a lot. But I remember him growing up for the Orioles. I remember he pitched a game I actually listened to when I was in Miami Beach against the White Sox. It was 1959, and he went 16 innings. And the Orioles eventually won it 1-0 in 16 innings. And Jerry Walker pitched that game. And I got to meet Jerry Walker and, of course, asked him about that game. And Raph, when I told him the story, went back in our archives and found something from Jerry Walker about that game. So it's just a minute or two, but I wanted to hear his voice. That is Jerry Walker. What a doubleheader. Jack Fisher, who pitched for the Giants eventually, goes 9, and then Jerry Walker comes out with 16 more scoreless against the Chicago White Sox, who won the American League pennant. But Jerry Walker was a nice man. He really was, and I enjoyed talking with him. So, Raf, thank you very much for looking in the archives for that. He was 85 years old. All right, Kerry Crowley joins us. Of course, Kerry's going to host our Giants warm-up today. Kerry, how are you?
Oh, Marty, doing well. Always a pleasure to hear your voice. And guess what? Last night, made my appearance at Westlake Joe's. Wednesday night, going to Marina Joe's for the first time. So it's a Joe's-filled week for me.
Wow. Well, try the cheesecake. I know you're stuck on that butter cake, but the cheesecake I thought was the best I'd ever had.
Yeah, so, I believe it. I believe it.
All right, very good. You see John Dugan there at all?
I did not last night, but hoping to later this week. That's the goal, you know?
All right, good. Well, I'm happy to chat with you. Boy, Kerr, every week we go through this, and we had the All-Star break, and here they are again. And I hesitate to ask you what you think. I'm afraid to hear what's coming here, but go ahead.
Well,
what do you think?
Marty, you know what I think. This is bad. This is really bad. You can't be 5 games under 500 on July 21st with the money that they spent this offseason, with the expectations in the expanded wild card era. And I just think if we were still in the 4 playoff team era where it's only 1 wild card team per league, what kind of a conversation will we be having right now? I think that this 3rd wild card chase has completely changed the complexion for the middle class of baseball right now, and the Giants are firmly in that middle class, not quite where the Rockies are, not quite where the Marlins are, but they're on the outside looking in, and it's an uphill battle for this team. There's big picture decisions that need to be made. And I wonder, Marty, how much ownership will have to get involved over the next 10 days or so?
Well, I said, first of all, that Soler should come out of that leadoff spot.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Let's try to win games now. I mean, let's face it. You win, 7 of 8, and all of a sudden you're in the driver's seat in the wild card. So there's still plenty of time to go, but they just haven't shown offense. Mm-hmm. And with Raph and I, we went through my book, and you could go back maybe 28 games or so, and they've had double-digit hits maybe 2 or 3 times in a full month of games. And it's the offense that's really, just slowed them down. So I don't know what they do offensively. So I said 2 things. One, if I'm Farhan, I'm going out and getting some relief help now. Mm-hmm. And I'm putting Hicks in the bullpen today.
Yep.
And I think they have to do that because I think for Walker and Rogers are getting overworked. But offensively, I'd get Luciano up here. I'd see what he can do. I'd probably try to get a right-handed hitting outfielder for Matos and see if he can, help Yastrzemski out there. And then I'd let Fitzgerald and Wisely play all the time.
Yeah.
And see what you can do there and get those young legs in here now in July and see what you can do. But I wouldn't wait around and say, okay, it's July 30th, let's get something now, because these games you got to win. Mm-hmm. And they lost 2 tough games here. And the Rockies really outplayed them, out-homered them, out-bullpenned them, and really out-defensed them here for 2 nights.
Yeah, it's inexcusable to lose to the Colorado Rockies in the way they did coming out of the break, Marty. And I think you mentioned something really important. A lot of this is on the lineup, and the issues with this year's Giants lineup are particularly acute when they face a left-handed pitcher. Kyle Freeland comes into last night's game with an ERA hovering around 6. He's still not the all-star caliber pitcher he once was, and they finished last night's game with 5 hits. And you look up and down this projected order, Marty. What was it supposed to look like against lefties? Austin Slater at the top of the order, Tyro Estrada and Wilmer Flores doing damage against lefties. Jorge Soler was supposed to be the guy who was in there against left-handers, providing the punch in the 3rd and 4th slot in the order. They've got nothing against left-handed pitchers this season, and that's one of the main reasons they're 5 games under 500. So I'm right there with you. I go out and I look for a right-handed hitter. I think they should have done that 10, 15 days ago, because when Austin Slater was let go, it was a sign that things weren't working. I'm right there with you. Bring up Marco Luciano. Have him play second base right now. Wisely and Fitzgerald can figure it out at shortstop. And so I think you've got a lot of solutions for this team. I'd like to see a sense of urgency for it.
Yeah, and I think Lamont Wade's got to pick it up too. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but he just doesn't quite look the same for some reason. Maybe he's choking up a little more in the bat. I don't know what it is, but he was a much more of a force before he got injured. I don't know what's going on with him, but we'll see. Look, they've got 4 with the Dodgers coming up. A lot of drama coming up this week, believe me. I'm not sure why. Why are they having a doubleheader? Does anyone explain this? I mean,
Marty, why are they having a doubleheader? Why hasn't Blake Snell pitched? Can we get an answer to why hasn't Blake Snell pitched coming out of the All-Star break?
Well, he will tomorrow. Tomorrow, right?
I guess.
Yeah,
he
goes tomorrow. Hicks goes Tuesday, and then I guess Robbie Ray Wednesday, and then it's Kershaw and Logan Webb on Thursday, and then it's the Rockies again. Then you got Harrison, and you're going to need Birdsong in there. Boy, I'll tell you, this pitching over this next week is going to be very interesting for them. That's why I say they better be careful with this bullpen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They absolutely need to be careful. And I'm right there with you that Jordan Hicks should be in the bullpen right now. I don't know what you gain by having him make one more start. And maybe it's just the fact that he'll go 3 innings and they'll treat it like a bullpen game, something like that. But he should be available all the time right now. Yeah. It should be all hands on deck for this team. There should be a playoff mentality, sense of urgency where, you look at each loss as devastating and heartbreaking, and you got to pick yourself up off the mat. And the Giants right now, there's just no sense of urgency, I think, coming from the organization. We've seen that reflected over the last 2 games. I don't get why Blake Snell wasn't lined up to pitch one of the first 2 out of the All-Star break. He would have been on full rest on Friday. You're paying him $30 million. He hasn't pitched much this season. Even if he's on a pitch count, 80 pitches, you have to have your horses ready to go. He could have been able to pitch against the Dodgers and then against the A's next week during the homestand. I just don't understand why he wasn't ready to go.
Well, I think it's probably they had Harrison, and they have, of course, Webb ready. You're not going to skip him. And then today was the issue with Hicks or Snell or Birdsong. And I guess you'd rather have Birdsong against the Rockies and you want Snell to pitch against the Dodgers, which is a stronger team, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you'll have Snell coming back at the end of the week, and then you'll have him against the A's the next week. So that's not the problem. The problem is that the team needs a jolt.
Yes.
And that's why I think Farhan's got to do something now. I would not wait around.
Mm-hmm.
And wait around and have him have a mediocre couple of weeks and say, gee, there's still only 3 out of the wild card. What should we do? Because that's going to happen. Unless they lose 9 out of 10, this wild card thing is always going to be like this, and always saying you're 1 week away from taking charge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then get what you need now. Don't wait around for everyone to play musical chairs, and all of a sudden you can't get something. So I would be decisive now.
Yeah,
that's my feeling.
They've been a week away for 15 weeks now, and I think that's the biggest issue is there's all sorts of moves that they can make, and it feels like it's just taking a little too long for that to happen. So I'm right there with you. I'd love to see some sort of aggressiveness from the front office and ownership. Make a statement, even if you are 5 games under 500, go out there and help the team at this moment. Because if you wait until July 30th, you're putting yourself in jeopardy of facing a Dodgers team that's bringing Clayton Kershaw back, that's getting a little healthier this week. And that's not what you want to see. You had to take care of business in Colorado. That didn't happen. And so now the urgency comes, the pressure mounts in L.A. against a Dodgers team that's running away with the division right now, even though it's had its fair share of injury issues. And so I think it's going to be a fascinating week. It's a drama-filled week. It's an intense week. And Marty, if we're being honest, the mosaic's only about halfway complete, even though it's we're 99 games into the season. There's so much left to be put together with this, and I can't wait to see how it finishes, but I'm worried about how it finishes,
Well, it's the 100th game today.
Mm-hmm.
That is 62.5% if I did it right, which would leave 37.5% left. And there's not that much time. There's a sense of urgency now. So we'll see where it goes. I think Arizona's back in it. They're starting to play well. They're getting the bullpen down. Pittsburgh all of a sudden is in it. I'm not sure about the Cardinals. That pitching staff, that'll hold up the whole way. So I think we're going to have this discussion the whole way.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. So we'll see. But they've got moves to make.
Yeah.
And we'll see if they can do it. But you want to win today and beat Ryan Feltner.
No kidding. He's 1-9 this season?
1-9, and I hate to say it, like Freeland, he's getting a little better lately. And he's a little bit better. So the thing for me is getting some real damage with the offense going, because they're going to have to score some runs. You can't go into L.A. and score 2, 3, 4 runs a game. you're going to have to score some runs because the Dodgers will score runs there. So we'll see. Everything else? How's everything else?
Everything else is great. You know, back in the city. Had dinner with my parents last night. They're out riding today. They're asking after you. I know that you caught up and got my dad's fierce opinions about the state of the San Francisco Giants.
He did not hold back.
He never does. He never does. Disgusted by last night's performance, Marty. So, you know.
I love him.
But we had a great cheeseburger last night, I'll tell you that much. So it made watching the game that much easier.
All right, that's Original Joe's. How do you feel about the Hall of Fame induction today? I'll let you go on this one. Joe Mauer, does that pave the way for Posey,
Yes.
Beltre? Quick thought on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian Beltre, one of the game's all-time characters. I love seeing him get in. And Joe Mauer, as long as he's in, it makes so much sense that Buster Posey's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer now because he paves the way. Posey's got the more impressive resume to me, and I think that Giants fans can relish in understanding that, hey, we're 2 years away now from Buster Posey in Cooperstown? We're getting closer.
All right. Well, have a great show. I'm just looking at the schedule here. Next Saturday, the doubleheader, I guess I'm on at noon. Next Saturday. So that a lot of baseball in between now and next Saturday. A lot of questions. Let's hope they do something. So,
Indeed.
Kara, have a great show. Be well, and we'll talk to everyone next week. Thanks,
All right.
Kerry.
Looking forward to it, Marty. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. That is Kerry Crowley. So we'll take a break. He's coming back with our Giants warm-up. Right after this, it's Giants baseball today. Giants and Rockies. If you want to enter our contest, at Baseball Marty on Twitter, guess the score of the game. We're dinner for two at Original Joe's, Westlake, North Beach, or West Portal. And Raf comes up with that secret participant for dinner for two at Soto Mare at 552 Green Street in North Beach with the Azolinos, which is always fun. All right, that's baseball on a Sunday. Have a great day, everybody. Kerry Crowley coming up next right here in the Sports Leader.
Seam heads, start cracking those peanuts and spitting those seeds, because gloves are soon to be popping.
He makes a headlong dive and makes the catch.
And bats are going to get cracking.
Blast one, deep right field, gone!
Welcome to KNBR's Giants Warm-Up.
Way back there, goodbye!
On the Sports Leader.
All right, welcome into our Giants warm-up. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you on Sunday morning. Always appreciate my conversations with Marty Lurie. Love talking baseball this morning. Some great stuff on the morning of the Hall of Fame induction. Not sure if we'll have much more time to cover that because the state of the San Francisco Giants is going to demand so much of our attention this morning. This is a team playing its 100th ball game today, 47-52. And you hate to say it's must-win games in the middle of July, but July 21st, the Giants have already dropped this series to the last-place Colorado Rockies. There must be a sense of urgency. It's the rookie, Hayden Birdsong, taking them out. We'll see how that slider, that breaking ball, plays at Coors Field. It's often difficult for these rookie pitchers the first time they acclimate to pitching in the altitude. So we'll see what Hayden Birdsong has in store for a Rockies lineup that has out-hit the Giants at Coors Field this weekend. Ryan Feltner takes the ball for Colorado. The Giants throwing out a little bit more traditional of a lineup than they have against their left-handed pitcher that they saw yesterday, Kyle Freeland. And so we will get into that over the course of the show, but we are 9 days away from Major League Baseball's July 30th trade deadline. So much to get into this morning, and a conundrum that the Giants ownership, the Giants front office faces right now with the direction of this franchise. They spent so much this offseason to contend. They expected to be in the postseason. Anything less would be a disappointment. And yet, here we are, July 21st, wondering, buy, sell, stand pat. It's all big decisions, and all of them will be made this week leading up to that July 30th trade deadline. I'm Kerry Crowley. This is Giants Warm-Up. On the other side, we get into the trade deadline dilemma. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the Sports Leader.
It's almost time for hot dogs, peanuts, cold beers, and orange and black baseball. Our Giants warm-up rolls on the sports leader.
All right, we are back here on Giants warm-up. Kerry Crowley getting you set for Giants baseball on the radio, coming your way from Coors Field as the Giants wrap up this 3-game set against the Colorado Rockies coming out of the All-Star break. And let's cut right to the chase. This is not the start to the second half that anyone anticipated. The Giants were supposed to come out of the All-Star break, have their pitching lined up, take care of the last-place Rockies, and start to figure out a way to give Farhan Zaidi in this front office an opportunity to assess this roster and look at how it could buy at the trade deadline. Because when you go all in, like the Giants did last offseason, when you push in the chips, when you spend upward of $200 million, when you've got the highest payroll of a president of baseball operations tenure that's now 6 years in, you expect that when the trade deadline rolls around, which it will here on July 30th, you expect to be in the mix. You expect to be adding to your roster. You expect to have to make tough decisions to part with your prospects, knowing that it will ultimately set you up for success this season. The anticipation way back in spring training was that the San Francisco Giants would be in position to add at the trade deadline, to make a second half push, to get Robbie Ray back, and to lunge toward the postseason with a big step in August and September. It was supposed to be the inverse of what we saw last year, when the Giants, through about the month of July, were one of the better teams in the National League. At one point, they were 13 games over 500. And then the collapse happened. August happened. September happened. This lineup was unwatchable. They coughed up a playoff opportunity, and they finished with what? 79 wins? Unacceptable. Giants president of baseball operations Farhan Zaidi essentially said as much last November, talking at the general manager meetings down in Arizona. He said to miss the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, as the Giants had done in 2022 and 2023, isn't up to the standard of this franchise. And so that's why the Giants spent as much money as they did, reshaped the top of their roster for the first time in the Farhan Zaidi era, going after not necessarily the A-plus list stars like Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, although they were interested in those players, but they landed some of the better free agents that this organization has been able to acquire in a long time. Remember, the issues with courting free agents to San Francisco and Oracle Park dates back well before Farhan Zaidi's tenure in San Francisco began. This is something that Bobby Evans struggled with. This is something that Brian Sabian struggled with. This is something the Giants have historically always had difficulty doing. Outside of bringing Barry Bonds home, it has not been a franchise that's had a rich tradition of courting free agents and signing the A-list names. But you look at what the Giants were able to do last offseason. You look at Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, Jorge Soler, Jung-Hoo Lee, who got the biggest contract of them all, Jordan Hicks, who's turned out to be a pretty good find in the rotation. And you look at where this team is right now, after losing back-to-back games at Coors Field in, quite frankly, unacceptable fashion to a last-place Rockies team that puts the Giants at 47-52 through 99 games. The sample size is huge. After today's game, it'll be 100 down, 62 left to go. And you look at where those expectations were set and where the Giants are now, and it's hard to come away with feeling like this season to date has been anything other than a failure. The Giants were supposed to contend near the top of the National League. Not necessarily with the Dodgers and the Phillies and the Braves, but they were supposed to be in position to beat the Padres, to beat the Diamondbacks, to have a better roster than the Cubs, the Brewers, the Pirates, the Reds. And right now, you take a look at the National League standings, and outside of the Marlins and the Rockies, who've demonstrated this weekend that they're better than the Giants at this moment in time, the Giants have not been better than just about anyone. And it is incredibly frustrating when you've got the trade deadline. It's now 9 days away, because you can't look at this team and honestly say they should go out and buy. You can't look at what the Giants roster has done to date and say, well, they're a piece or two away. You can't. You can look at the wild card standings and understand that the Giants are 4 games out in a National League wildcard race that is loaded with other mediocre teams, but you can't say that they're one or two pieces away. That one big ticket addition is going to change the course of this season and help the Giants move forward in a way that, hey, maybe we weren't expecting. But right now, the Giants are facing a massive conundrum because last offseason when Gabe Kapler was fired and Bob Melvin was hired, they extended President of Baseball Operations Farhan Zaidi's contract. So Bob Melvin got a 3-year deal. Farhan Zaidi was extended to the end of the 2026 season. And the Giants in year 6 under Farhan Zaidi are no better than they were in year 1. You look at where this roster is right now, what this team's record is right now, the state of the farm system right now, and you can't say that they've definitively taken steps forward. You would be able to if they were 52-47. You would be able to if they had a top 10 farm system. You would be able to if they were sitting in a wild card position. But you can't right now. You can't watch the last 2 games, and quite honestly, you can't watch the 99 games that the Giants have played this season and feel as if this is an organization that is in really healthy shape, that is moving in the right direction, and that you can feel confident about. Even if they miss the playoffs this year, you wouldn't be able to feel confident about their long-term outlook for 2025 and 2026. You can't do it. It's a sobering reality after losing 2 games to the Colorado Rockies, the last-place team in the National League West, a team that has no business beating the Giants the way they have the last 2 nights. With a pitcher in Kyle Freeland, who, yes, he's been an all-star before. Yes, he's had good seasons, but let's be honest. His ERA was hovering around 6 when he shut down the Giants last night. A Giants team that picked up just 5 hits at hitter-friendly Coors Field. A Giants team that's been shut down each of these last 2 games by the Colorado Rockies bullpen, which hasn't been good, I don't know, since the franchise came about in 1993. Realistically, you look at this Giants team and you say, they should probably sell. At 47-52, they should probably take a look at this entire roster, figure out who has value, who can bring in prospects in return, and who could be traded so that the Giants can get players who could help them in the future. Because this year, can you honestly look at the roster? Can you honestly look at this front office and say, I feel good. I feel good about where the Giants are headed. The answer is almost unequivocally no. And yet the Giants are in this position where after firing Gabe Kapler and hiring Bob Melvin and extending Farhan Zaidi's contract to align with Bob Melvin, that ownership is facing an incredibly difficult choice because no owner wants to fire people who have multiple years left on a contract. No owner wants to say, hey, there's 2 years left to go for Farhan, for Bob Melvin, for a number of people inside the organization, but we're not heading the right direction. We know we need to make changes. And so what will Farhan be allowed to do at this trade deadline? Because I do think that ownership will call the shots here. I do think that Greg Johnson and other leaders in the Giants ownership group will call the shots on the direction the Giants take. There's a few complicating factors as well. Attendance, by and large, is up at Oracle Park this year. Giants fans, for the most part, wanted to see this roster in action. I'll be honest, I wanted to see this roster in action. I thought it would be a whole lot better than it is. Instead, you got a 2024 group that's worse than the sum of its parts. You've got a 2024 group where individuals on the roster are having decent seasons. In fact, there's been a few good stories. Elliot Ramos is a great story this year. Lamont Wade, through the first half of the season, was one of the more patient hitters in baseball. Looked like he could be headed toward an all-star berth. Of course, the knee injury, the hamstring issue, those popped up and threw his season off the rails. Ryan Walker has had a great year out of the bullpen. Kyle Harrison threw 5 shutout innings at Coors Field the other night. He looks like a long-term rotation mainstay for this squad. Individually, there are good stories for the San Francisco Giants. But it is a team that is still worse than the sum of its parts. And so what will ownership decide? Because if attendance is up and Farhan's under contract, do they really want to bite the bullet and sell? Even if that is the most prudent decision that this Giants organization can make right now. And just last week, I was among the people saying, hey, you go take care of business at Coors Field. You take 2 or 3 from the Dodgers. You win that series at Oracle Park, 4 games in 3 days next weekend. And all of a sudden, you're back in this wild card race. You're back contending. You're feeling good about yourself. But coming out of the All-Star break, losing back-to-back games at Coors Field in the fashion the Giants have, the bullpen coughing it up on Friday night, the offense not providing nearly enough against Kyle Freeland, whose ERA, again, hovering around 6. The Giants can make any pitcher this season look like an all-star. They're facing quite a conundrum. I don't know, quite honestly, what ownership will do here. I don't know because they're in a difficult position. When you've got someone who has been handed the keys to spend a ton of money, like Farhan was last offseason, and the output is this, a 47-52 team, do you really fold? Do you say, you know what, forget the attendance marks for August and September. Forget the fact that we spent $200 million. We need to prioritize the future. I think that that's the prudent move. I think that at this point, as long as the Giants don't turn it around in a major way this week, that's probably the best course of action for this franchise. But I don't know if ownership will do that. I have no idea what Greg Johnson and company are thinking heading in to this July 30th trade deadline. Would they tell Farhan to take offers on Camilo Doval? Would they part with important pieces? Let's say Blake Snell comes out and makes 2 more good starts. Well, I think the Giants would be wise to field offers there. They don't want to be on the hook for $30 million next season, understanding what Snell's already cost them this year. If Robbie Ray comes back and makes 2 good starts before the trade deadline, is he on the move? Michael Conforto, Jorge Soler. Who can the Giants trade right now? Camilo Doval is the most realistic player who could be on his way out of San Francisco, in part because closers have value. I know that the value is diminished for Doval right now because of a few recent outbursts, a few recent blow-ups on the mound. But I do think that if you're a team like the Baltimore Orioles that needs to add at the trade deadline, that needs to solidify its bullpen, you could do far worse than someone who's got closing experience, who's pitched in high-leverage situations and seems to thrive when his team is doing better. Right now, how many games are the Giants going to have for Doval to save down the stretch? That's another realistic question. I think that the Giants are at a point where they're at a crossroads. They realistically should take a step back. But doing so, when attendance is up and your President's Baseball operations is under contract for 2 more seasons, that is a really difficult decision for ownership to make. And I anticipate that if the Giants miss the playoffs, it will be really difficult for ownership to justify bringing this front office back. I don't envision a way where you can go 6 seasons as a President of Baseball operations in the expanded wildcard era, never having won a postseason series, only making the playoffs once and keep your job. I just don't think that's realistic. I don't care if you're a big market team like San Francisco. I don't care if you're a small market team that doesn't spend that much money. It just doesn't feel in the expanded wildcard era like it's realistic to accept that, hey, this team just couldn't get to 84, 85, 86 wins in 5 out of 6 seasons. 2021 looks more like an outlier with each passing day. And after missing the playoffs in 2022 and 2023, the Giants tried to correct. They spent a lot of money last offseason. Most of those signings were failures. They spent a lot of money this offseason. In fact, more than they'd ever spent in the Farhan Zaidi era, the second most of any team in the free agent market last offseason, behind the $1 billion Dodgers offseason. And yet, where are they? Headed toward yet another sub-500 season. Something must change for this organization. And the longer that this mediocre streak of play continues, the longer that this subpar streak of play continues, the more I feel as if it's something drastic, if it's big picture changes for the organization. And I might feel differently if the Giants were at a point where you could say, hey, this major league roster is bad, but look at the talent at AAA and AA coming up. They're going to be really good next year. But I don't think we can honestly assess the state of this Giants farm system and say, better days are ahead in the very near future. This looks like a franchise that is going to need help from the outside in terms of building up this roster to the point where it's contending for a playoff spot. And help from the outside either means one of two things. A, acquiring free agents, which, let's be honest, the Giants don't have a great track record doing. They don't have a great track record finding the impact players, the guys who make this roster significantly better. That was true before Farhan. It's been especially true over the last few seasons under Farhan. Or you could add from the outside with trades from the inside. You could make tough decisions to part with meaningful talent. It's on your roster right now. Maybe it's Camilo Doval, maybe it's Ryan Walker, maybe it's someone else. But I do think after losing the first two games out of this All-Star break in Colorado in the fashion the Giants have lost them, they need to recalibrate. They need to reconsider. They've got a week to change this. They've got 7 days left. 8 games to go before the trade deadline. 9, including today's ball game. And it's hard to say that you feel good about the direction of this franchise right now. One good week of baseball, things might be different, but we were expecting that one good week of baseball to start on Friday night, and it's been anything but over the last 48 hours. I'm Kerry Crowley. This show is Giants Warm-Up. We're getting you set for Giants baseball on the radio. Hayden Birdsong takes the mound for the Giants today. A glimpse at a pitcher who could play a major role over the next few seasons for this Giants organization, regardless of what it does at this year's trade deadline, regardless of whether the Giants are any good in 2025 and 2026. We're rolling here on KNBR. You're listening to KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
It sound right, boys. Sound right, boys. It sound right, boy.
Now back to the show built for the orange and black family. This is Giants Warm Up on KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, we're back here on Giants Warm Up. Kerry Crowley getting you set for Giants baseball on the radio. Game 3 of this 3-game set between the San Francisco Giants and the Colorado Rockies coming your way at 12:10. That's first pitch from Coors Field. We still have plenty more to go here in Giants Warm Up. And, of course, our full Giants pregame show this morning as we prepare you for Hayden Birdsong taking the mound against the Colorado Rockies. Interesting choice from Bob Melvin. They decided to push Jordan Hicks back, send Birdsong to the mound. And, of course, Hicks has been informed that he will no longer continue as a member of the Giants rotation once Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb come back from the injured list. So he will go to the bullpen. The Giants haven't exactly decided how to deploy Jordan Hicks in that bullpen role. He could be starting as an opener. He could be piggybacking behind Ray, behind Cobb. But I think the anticipation is to pitch him just about every fourth, every fifth day on a far more limited pitch count and innings count for the remainder of the season. Hicks is one of the few success stories I think the Giants can point to this season. Perhaps one of their most successful free agents that they signed, given that they signed this big class. Jung-Hoo Lee, Blake Snell, Jorge Soler, Matt Chapman, Tom Murphy also part of this class. And Jordan Hicks is someone who delivered during the first half of the season. We couldn't have expected him to be a great major league starter right out of the gate because he'd had 6 years of experience as a relief pitcher in the St. Louis Cardinals bullpen. But I think that what we saw from Jordan Hicks this season gives me hope that he can be a full-time major league starter moving forward into 25, into 26, and the final year of that contract in 27. His contract was probably the one that I was most skeptical of as the Giants gave him that 4-year, $44 million deal around January. But for the most part, he delivered this season. It wasn't as pretty in the months of May, June, and July as it was during the month of April when he really looked like he was hitting his stride. You could tell that sinker command was really good. He'd taken a few ticks off of the velo compared to the time when he was a reliever with the Cardinals. But all things considered, I think that Jordan Hicks and his season to date can be considered largely a success for the San Francisco Giants. Now, I also believe that one of the biggest issues with this 2024 roster, which I mentioned in our last segment, worse than the sum of its parts, is that many players have taken a step back this season. And I don't know whether this is on President of Baseball Operations Farhan Zaidi and his roster composition, going with a little bit of an older, more veteran-led roster than he had in the past. I don't know if this is on Bob Melvin and his coaching staff, which, of course, a completely different coaching staff, save for about one or two names compared to the staff that Gabe Kapler had in San Francisco that have been working with these Giants players. I don't know if the adjustments and tweaks that they have made just haven't sunk in with these players or if they were too difficult to make for these players. And bottom line, I also think some of it is just on the players. I think at the end of the day, we always like to shield some of the players from criticism, but the reality is you can't expect to take a step forward as a franchise, as a team, when so many of your individual players are taking a step back and failing to live up to the numbers that are on the back of their baseball cards. And so you look at the individual cases of these Giants players. You look at who's gotten better this season, who's gotten worse, and it's hard to say that the Giants are trending in the right direction, like I mentioned in our last segment, as a franchise when so many key players have taken a step back this year. I look over at first base where Wilmer Flores was really the Giants' most consistent player during the 2023 season. He was the person in the second half of the year who was maybe the most important at bat for this Giants lineup. And, you go to August and September when much of the team was unwatchable. Wilmer Flores was the one guy who consistently delivered for this team. And you look at Flores' numbers this year, and I think he's in danger of losing a roster spot over the next 9 days. If the Giants can't find a trade partner for Wilmer Flores, who's got a $3.5 million player option next season, which right now I think he would opt into, I think that Flores is someone who could be DFA'd by this year's deadline, and I do think that could come in the days after the deadline. He's got a .597 OPS. He's got a .207 batting average. Someone who's just killed left-handed pitchers throughout his career has not been able to do so for the San Francisco Giants this season. That is a major reason why this lineup has underperformed. You look at second base this year, Thairo Estrada, who was better than league average last year as a second baseman. He was someone who the Giants came into this season thinking that they could depend on. I thought that Estrada last offseason could have been a short-term extension candidate. You know, you buy out a few of those arbitration years. You're maybe looking at 3 years, $20 million, 3 years, $24 million. If you want a deal that's fair to both sides, I don't see Estrada coming back next season if his performance continues like this right now. Estrada threw 85 games this year on the field, a .219 average, a .252 on-base percentage. That's really killing the Giants right now. The on-base percentage being at around .252, that's extremely low. A .610 OPS, not going to cut it. The Giants came into this season hoping that the infield would be better. They were hoping that Marco Luciano would seize the job at shortstop. That never happened. Nick Ahmed played far too many games at the shortstop position before the Giants settled kind of on this platoon of Tyler Fitzgerald and Brett Wisely that I do think positions them well moving forward. But again, it took them too long to get to the point where they were relying on Wisely and Fitzgerald. I think that, today is game number 100. You've got 62 to go after this series ends against the Colorado Rockies. You would have hoped that you'd found a long-term solution at the shortstop position by now. Instead, the Giants relying on a platoon of two younger, slightly unproven guys in Wisely and Fitzgerald. This is Wisely's first full season at the major league level. Fitzgerald's been up and down from AAA Sacramento, and it's really hard to tell what a full sample size of 600 bats would look like for either of these players. So I don't think the Giants can head into 2025 feeling any better about their shortstop position, understanding that, down in AAA, Marco Luciano is kind of transitioning to second base, which might tell you that by the end of this season, if Estrada doesn't pick it up, he could be in jeopardy of losing a roster spot, and they could bring Luciano up and see what he can offer this team in August and September. So the theme of major changes is on the way in San Francisco. Whether they come at the trade deadline or not, I have no idea. I think that's an ownership call. I don't think, as I said, it's a Farhan Zaidi call, quite frankly, because I don't think he's earned the right to make those decisions at this year's deadline. I think that ownership has to step in and kind of dictate the plan for the San Francisco Giants moving forward, whether they want to take a step back over the next few seasons and focus on rebuilding or lean in and say, hey, we spent all this money. We're going to continue to plow our way through August and September and see if we can get to a point where we can contend in a National League that, as I've mentioned so many times throughout the course of this 2024 season, is filled with mediocre teams and teams that are in very similar positions to the San Francisco Giants, where they haven't quite put it together yet. They're still hopeful. They're still optimistic. But 100 games in, there's no body of work to suggest that something different will happen for these teams, that they'll go on a run, that they will suddenly become one of the best teams in the National League over the final 62 games of this year. You go over to third base, Matt Chapman, kind of playing what you expected from him, solid defense. His baseball reference WAR, one of the highest on the team right now, well above 3. And so he's been an upgrade over J.D. Davis. You look at the overall numbers compared to his tenure with the Oakland A's. Obviously, he started to cool off a little bit in Toronto with the Blue Jays, had some up and down seasons in Toronto. And then with San Francisco, he's been about 10, 11% better than league average at the plate this year. But again, inconsistent, some streaks that have been very hot, some streaks that have been very cold. And I think that overall he's been stable, but it's hard to say that he has consistently improved over the course of the last few seasons. So the Giants were taking a risk signing him to that contract that they did last offseason, understanding that, hey, a good final 2 months for Matt Chapman could mean that he's opting out of this 3-year deal that he signed with the San Francisco Giants, and the Giants will again have to start over at third base moving forward. You move to the outfield. Michael Conforto's been about what the Giants anticipated this year, 10, 11% better than league average in left field. Not exactly great against left-handed pitchers, but I think that the Giants coming into this campaign were hoping that Jung-Hoo Lee would turn into a star in center field. I certainly think that he has great potential in center field. He goes down with a shoulder injury. What are you going to do? You bring up Elliot Ramos, who was, 8th, 9th on this depth chart in the outfield headed into spring training, was clearly 7th, 8th, 9th on the depth chart in the middle of spring training when he was optioned to AAA Sacramento. And I don't know how much credit you can give the front office or the coaching staff when Ramos was essentially forced onto this team by a result of injuries, and the Giants were forced to play him, and then he lived up to his potential. He lived up to the expectations that came with being a first-round draft pick way back in 2017, becomes an all-star, the first homegrown outfield all-star for the San Francisco Giants since that 1986 season with Chili Davis. I pretty much give all the credit to Ramos and the AAA coaching staff. Damon Minor, who worked with him, Dave Brundage, the manager down there at AAA Sacramento, who spent a lot of time over the last 4 years with Elliot Ramos. I think that the player deserves a ton of credit in this situation, because when the deck is stacked against you, when the odds are stacked against you, as it was this season with Elliot Ramos, it was going to be hard to project this type of a breakthrough, and yet he has been the biggest bright spot on the San Francisco Giants. Then you look into, the third and the fourth outfield roles with Mike Yastrzemski and Austin Slater over there. And I think you see a situation where Yastrzemski's pretty much been at or above his career average in the outfield. He's got a 764 OPS right now. It's a 120 OPS plus, so about 5% better than he was throughout his career, 115 to date. And Austin Slater just took a major step back this year. So you're talking about three right-handed hitters in Slater, Estrada, and Flores that took a huge step back. And that could have been offset for the San Francisco Giants if Jorge Soler lived up to his potential, who signed the big 3-year, $43 million deal with the San Francisco Giants this offseason. But instead, Soler's been worse than league average this year as the designated hitter. He's got a 222 average, just a 300 on-base percentage, 10 home runs after the All-Star break, a year after hitting 36 with the Miami Marlins. It's been a very difficult adjustment for Jorge Soler coming over from Miami, and I don't think that we've seen any real stretches of consistency for him when he's put the lineup on his back, when he's put this offense on his back. And I think that's been one of the greatest disappointments for the San Francisco Giants this year. So the question begs, where does this team go at the trade deadline? If you've got a ton of players who've trended in the wrong direction, like the Giants had with a slew of right-handed hitters this season, with Soler, with Slater, with Flores, with Estrada, what do you do? Because it's hard to say that this team could be better moving forward. It's hard to say, as I mentioned at the top of this Giants warm-up, that you can have confidence in where Farhan Zaidi is leading this team, because it's one thing if you're bad or mediocre at the major league level and your farm system is teeming with talent and ready to produce the type of players who can replace those on your major league roster so that you can take a step forward. It's not the case for the San Francisco Giants. Not only are they 5 games under 500 heading into this series finale against a Colorado Rockies team that's already won the series against them, but their farm system is not producing the talent that's going to make the Giants dramatically better in August, September, or 2025. There's certainly hope for beyond that because you've got a bunch of lottery tickets in the low minors. You've got a ton of players who were just drafted this year, including James Tibbs III, the first-round draft pick of the San Francisco Giants. You've got Bryce Eldridge coming through the farm system, who's already at High A Eugene. But you can't say that anyone is going to make a major impact in 2025 who isn't already here, who we haven't already seen. There aren't guys who you can point to and say, well, we really have to protect him at the trade deadline. Let's say the Giants were 5 games over 500 or 6 games over 500, and they were looking to add right now. I think that there would be other teams that, hey, if they've got pieces that they want to sell, they'd look at the Giants farm system and they'd say, well, who do we want? Because there aren't the high-level blue-chip prospects that are going to transform the franchise overnight at the top levels of this organization. The one guy who you can say is worth protecting right now is Bryce Eldridge, who's, again, still down at High A Eugene. He's still basically a teenager, first-round draft pick last year of the San Francisco Giants coming out of high school, and there's still a lot of development left in Bryce Eldridge's game right now. And so it's just hard to look at this franchise and say that it is better off than it was coming into this season, better off than it was after the 2023, after the 2022, and after the 2021 seasons. And so when you've got a trend line like that, major changes are in order. I already said ownership is going to have to make tough calls because Farhan Zaidi was extended coming into this season to align his contract with Bob Melvin. But when the product is pretty consistent, as it has been for the San Francisco Giants over the last few seasons, and it is consistently mediocre or consistently below average, that calls for big-time changes. And I don't know what ownership will decide, whether it's replacing the baseball operations president, whether it's, starting from scratch and picking a new manager as well, whether it's, not making any sort of a move at this year's trade deadline. I have no idea, but I do know this is not a position that you want to be in right now. This is not a position 6 years in to President of Baseball Operations Farhan Zaidi's tenure that the Giants anticipated being in. And it's certainly not a position, after spending $200+ million last offseason, the Giants thought that they would be in come July 21st. So here we are. The Giants and the Rockies coming your way from Coors Field this afternoon here on KNBR. First pitch at 12:10. More Giants warm-up coming up. You're listening to KNBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
Giants fans, first pitch isn't too far away as KNBR's Giants warm-up continues on the sports leader.
All right, we are back here on Giants Warm-Up. Kerry Crowley getting you set for Giants baseball coming your way just about an hour from now from Coors Field. Hayden Birdsong, the rookie, takes the mound for the San Francisco Giants. Back here with our standings update, sponsored by the Alameda County Probation Department. Visit joinacpd.org today for a career that matters. Well, after last night's loss to the Colorado Rockies, the Giants fall to 47-52, which means they are now 11 games out in the National League West, 4 games out of that third wild card spot in the National League. Here's a look at the West Division right now. The Dodgers 58-41 at the top. Arizona 51-48 in second place, ahead of the third place. San Diego Padres 51-50 right now. The Padres sitting outside of a wild card spot by just a game. The Diamondbacks in control of one of those 3 wild card spots. And then the fifth place Colorado Rockies 36-63 after beating the Giants twice to open up the second half. In the NL East, it's the Philadelphia Phillies running away with the division. They've got a 7.5 game edge over the Atlanta Braves, who lead the wild card race. They've got a 4 game cushion right now as they're 11 games over 500. The New York Mets have also positioned themselves as a wild card team, sitting at 50-47 through their first 97 games so far this season. Washington Nationals at 46-53, 5 games out in the wild card hunt, and the Miami Marlins bringing up the cellar in the National League East at 34-64, the worst record in the National League. The Central jam-packed, but the Milwaukee Brewers still have a nice cushion. They're 14 over 500. They've got a 5-game edge in the division over the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals a half game out of that third wild card spot in the National League. The Cardinals in control of a third wild card spot in the National League by a half a game. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates at 50-48 who are a half game out in the NL wild card race. So many teams, it's all jumbled up. It's way too soon to really understand how all of this is going to look right now. But I still, at this juncture of the season, have a hard time believing that the Pittsburgh Pirates, who had no intention of competing at all this season, are ahead of the San Francisco Giants by a couple games in this wild card race. The Cincinnati Reds equal to the Giants at 47-52. They're 4 games out of the wild card hunt, and the Chicago Cubs 47-53. Still technically in it, but they could be a deadline seller as well. Let's take a quick look at the American League, where the Baltimore Orioles hold a 2-game edge over the New York Yankees in the AL East. In the AL Central, it's the Cleveland Guardians in command of that division. They've got a 5-game advantage over the Minnesota Twins, 6-game lead over the Kansas City Royals, who are still in the hunt right now in that wild card race. And in the AL West, what a comeback this season for the Houston Astros. They are sitting at 52-46, 1 game ahead of the Seattle Mariners, who had a huge advantage in the West earlier this year, but the Astros have made a big comeback. They are now in control of the West. Bruce Bochy's Texas Rangers 46-52 after winning the World Series a season ago. 6 games out in the West, 7.5 games out in the wild card hunt, which means Bochy's Rangers could be poised to sell at this year's trade deadline. 7.5 out. That's an even more sizable deficit than what the San Francisco Giants face in their own wild card hunt. Again, 3-7 in their last 10 ball games, 4 games out in the wild card, 11 games back in the division. They go against the Colorado Rockies today. Then it's 4 games against the Dodgers this week before the Giants return home for 4 more in 3 days before the trade deadline at Oracle Park. They've got the scheduled doubleheader next Saturday. Coming up next, it's your full San Francisco Giants pregame show, this date in Giants history, and so much more. Kerry Crowley rolling with you here on KNBR, an hour until first pitch here on KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.